In the demon realm, the Dragon King stood imposingly, looking down at me, Seiwu, who was kneeling on the ground. Coughing up blood, a huge hole marked his chest. His breathing was weak and irregular. Seiwu coughed blood onto the floor. This guy has watched so much anime that he knows spitting blood automatically increases the drama by 300. 100 years ago, a meteor from another world fell into the demon realm. The Dragon King declared, although you have toyed with this realm, wielding that strange power, this is where your journey ends. He then told Seiwu to state his final wish. Asking what desire had led him to seek out the dragon of the demon realm, Seiwu looked at the Dragon King with a firm gaze and, coughing, said he wanted to return to the place he called home. With blood running down his face, the Dragon King told Seiwu that, for someone who risked their life to challenge him, his wish was pathetically trivial. However, it was impressive that Seiwu had made it this far, knowing it was a wish that could never be granted. He added that Seiwu shouldn't feel bad, as the power to return home, the dimensional sphere, was inside his heart. Upon hearing this, Seiwu smiled. He asked the Dragon King if he had any idea how much he had suffered to find the dimensional sphere. It had been a full 100 years, 100 damn years in this cursed world. The Dragon King then raised his hand and told Seiwu to consider himself lucky, as he would end his insignificant existence right there and then. But before the attack could land, a sudden golden light enveloped him. Plot twist. Either he activated an invincibility hack, or he finally found the continue button after dying 1,000 times against this final boss. The light shone intensely, blocking the Dragon King's attack, and a magic circle appeared on the ground. The Dragon King had no idea what was happening. Clutching his bleeding hand, which had been cut by the light, he asked Seiwu what kind of light that was. He was even more shocked to see Seiwu's wounds healing, but soon realized it wasn't just normal healing, it was regeneration. Seiwu stood up, wiped the blood from his mouth, now fully healed, and asked the Dragon King if he would hand over the dimensional sphere willingly, or if Seiwu would have to rip it out of his heart. The Dragon King panicked, realizing Seiwu was no ordinary warrior. With a calm smile, Seiwu gave him 3 seconds to hand over the sphere. When the time was up, Seiwu punched straight through the Dragon King's heart, saying he had waited long enough. The Dragon King's body collapsed lifeless to the ground, and in Seiwu's hand was the dimensional sphere. The guy literally pulled out an interdimensional subway pass from the boss chest. That's the best loot Eve ever seen. A voice out of nowhere belonged to Fry. Fry told Seiwu it was disappointing that he had spent 100 years just to end up with a demon dragon sphere. He called Seiwu a glutton and said he had weird tastes. Yeah, because swallowing a magic sphere is totally normal. Any moment now, this guy will turn into an anime protagonist and shoot Kamehameha blasts from his mouth. Seiwu corrected Fry, saying it was a dimensional sphere, not just a ball, and told him to shut up. He tossed the sphere into the air and swallowed it, causing a magic circle to appear beneath him. He smiled, knowing he was finally going home, to his disciples, his younger brother, and to Earth. Hopefully, he didn't forget his home Wi-Fi password. After 100 years, it's probably harder to remember than any dragon's riddle. Somewhere in a forest, Seiwu was lying on the ground. He woke up and got up. The first thing he did was call out to the parasite, referring to Fry. Fry responded, asking what Seiwu wanted and if he needed food, before saying he was busy vomiting from nausea inside Seiwu's stomach. Seiwu realized Fry had made it through in one piece and called him a disgusting creature, telling him to hurry up and get digested. Fry asked if he was sure about that, warning that the result wouldn't be pleasant. Looking around, Seiwu told Fry to shut up before he ended up throwing up himself. He asked if this place was Earth. I bet he was expecting to land in a futuristic skyscraper, not in the middle of the wilderness. Interdimensional travel never makes life easy. Fry mocked him for not recognizing his own home. Seiwu explained that Earth's landscape varied depending on the location. After observing for a moment, he noticed that the mana flow felt similar to inside a portal, but he wasn't sure. Fry commented that Seiwu smelled like a weakling at first. Seiwu ignored it, but soon he panicked upon realizing something was wrong with his mana. He spent 100 years training in hell, returned home, and already lost his protagonist buff. It's like when you come back from vacation and forget everything you learned at work. Fry asked if Seiwu had been a fraud all along and said he was about to end their partnership. Annoyed, Seiwu replied that this problem had happened before. Fry asked what he meant by before. Seiwu explained that it seemed to be a side effect of interdimensional travel. Just like when he was sent from Earth to another world 100 years ago, his attributes had plummeted absurdly. At that moment, he was only at 20 of his maximum strength. Only 20? Oh great, so he's just at the God of War level instead of Universe Destroyer. Fry laughed at Seiwu's weakened state and told him to recover quickly before he got kicked out. Seiwu was irritated, saying it wasn't that simple last time. It took him decades to fully recover. Hocked. Fry said he was canceling their contract since he couldn't even use half of his incredible abilities with Seiwu's pathetic mana. Seiwu argued that his mana wasn't completely useless. Then he noticed someone. A girl was running. Panting heavily, she murmured that she was screwed. She had lost her companions while running for her life. She had no idea if they were okay. But more importantly, she wondered why there was already an orc in the dungeon so early. Her life was so miserable that she was already thinking, did the game bug out? She screamed for help but tripped over a rock. As the orc approached, Seiwu effortlessly defeated it with a punch and asked the girl if this place was Earth. This guy arrived so overpowered that the monsters probably already got a warning. If you see this man, play dead. Stunned, she stammered a yes. Seiwu asked again if it was Korea and what year it was. Still in shock over what he had done, she confirmed that it was Korea and the year was 2037. Seiwu calculated that he had been sucked into another dimension in 2027, wondering if 100 years in the demon realm had passed as only 10 years on Earth. Imagine disappearing for 10 years and coming back without a single gray hair. The family group chat on WhatsApp would have lost their minds thinking he had been abducted by aliens. He asked who the current president was. She answered, Choi Dae-soo. Seiwu was shocked, asking if she meant that muscle-headed idiot with one missing eye. The girl had no idea who he was talking about and assumed he was role-playing. The guy had basically returned to his world, but had already turned into an old man telling stories. No one understood. Seiwu couldn't believe Choi Dae-soo was president. He commented that there was probably no one better for the job. Well, maybe a golden retriever in a suit, but that dog would probably cause chaos in meetings. He then asked her if they were inside a portal, noticing the strange mana flow. Excited, she corrected him, saying it wasn't a portal but a tutorial tower. Seiwu had no idea what that was, so she explained. The tutorial tower had appeared a few years ago as a gateway for hunters. By completing it, hunters could awaken abilities and gain new techniques. The higher their awakening level, the better the guilds they could join, so everyone rushed to complete it as quickly as possible. Hearing this, Seiwu commented that, in his time, people awakened just fine without this nonsense. All it took was a smack on the head from a master, and boom, instant awakening. He stretched and asked if finishing the tower was all it took to leave, wondering how long it usually took. She replied that, on average, it took 8 weeks, but skilled hunters could finish in 3 weeks. The record holder, Ruji-1, had completed it in 3 weeks. Seiwu thought about this while the girl panicked as a troll tiger approached. She instructed him to run, but Seiwu commented that 3 weeks was way too long. Just hearing that was enough to bore him. Even as the troll tiger got closer, Seiwu remained still, thinking with his eyes closed. The girl screamed at him, asking if the academy hadn't taught him to run from troll tigers. Of course they had. The first rule was, don't be slower than your friend. Before the creature could attack them, Seiwu shattered its teeth with a single punch, shocking the girl. He then declared that 5 days would be enough to clear the tower, and that's with him setting aside a day for sleep. Meanwhile, in the office of the Empire Guild Master, Sunjun, someone reported that a hunter had just exited the tutorial tower. Sunjun found it impressive since it had been exactly 8 weeks since the last entry. However, the report indicated that this hunter wasn't listed in the original entry records and had no official log of entering the tower. Now, he was causing a commotion outside. The assistant showed Sunjun a video, and in an instant it caught his attention. It was his senior brother. Back after all these years, the girl couldn't believe the absurd scene before her. Seiwu had completed the tutorial tower in just 5 days. And if it weren't for his snack break, maybe it would have been 4. Seiwu commented that fighting definitely seemed to speed up recovery. It looked like about 25 of his strength had returned. They received an announcement the tower had been cleared, and stats were being calculated while skill compatibility was analyzed. However, the system couldn't measure Seiwu's stats or abilities. It seemed like even the system had given up on trying to understand him. Then, the tower gate opened. Seiwu stepped out, happy to finally be back in Seoul. On the other side of the tutorial tower's gate, Seiwu and the girl were being inspected. A muscular man arrived at the scene and asked why there was so much commotion. The person beside him commented that there seemed to be an issue. Even though the gate had just opened, the muscular man recalled seeing the pretty girl on the list. He then asked the inspector what the problem was. The inspector responded that 2 people had exited the gate, but one of them wasn't registered in the entrance records. The muscular man, leader of Team 2, looked at Seiwu. He found it hard to believe that Seiwu had cleared the tower and come out unscathed, given his slim physique and rough appearance. I know, everyone expects a buff, imposing hero, but unfortunately, you got stuck with Seiwu with a confident, arrogant expression. Seiwu pushed the inspector aside. Determined to handle the situation himself, puffing out his chest, he asked Seiwu who he was and why he wasn't on the entrance list. Seiwu calmly replied that it was because he hadn't entered through the entrance. The man retorted that, if Seiwu had entered through the gate, he should have exited the same way. So how could he be coming out without having gone in? Yes, the classic no-entry entrance paradox. Einstein would be proud. The man laughed and commented that Seiwu didn't respect his superiors. Fry whispered to Seiwu, noting that the man seemed to enjoy talking nonsense. I think he trains his tongue more than his fists. The man placed his finger on Seiwu's forehead and called him an idiot, accusing him of using a camouflage ability. He threatened Seiwu, demanding that he explain how he entered the tower or suffer the consequences. Suffer the consequences. Wow, looks like he accidentally set the difficulty to hard mode. The man threatened to rip Seiwu's face off with his own hands. Seiwu chuckled slightly and told the man to shut up because his breath smelled like garbage. Seriously, dude. It's like you brushed your teeth with garlic and rinsed with spoiled milk. Stunned, the man asked if Seiwu had lost his mind. Seiwu casually massaged his neck and told the man to fight since he had just threatened to rip his face off. He provoked him to hurry up and act because his breath was awful, advising him to breathe as little as possible. If you need a gas mask, I understand. Unable to contain his rage, the man tried to punch Seiwu. Seiwu told him to shut up, and in an instant it was over. Sunjun and his assistant, who had just arrived, were shocked to see the man and his subordinates unconscious on the ground, their heads swollen. Damn, this looks like a scene straight out of Tom and Jerry. An inspector explained that the person he had reported earlier for causing disturbances had gotten into a fight with the security team and then disappeared. Sunjun asked if there was any security footage that clearly showed the person. They played the recording, which showed the individual taking down 5 hunters in near seconds before vanishing. An inspector suggested that the person might be a stealth ability user, as they hadn't been detected. Sunjun disagreed, stating that it was simply a matter of speed, nothing more. The guy basically activated flash mode. He focused intently on the recording and recognized the person as his senior brother, who hadn't changed in 10 years. No wrinkles. What? Did he discover the secret to eternal youth? Because if he did, I want in. He immediately ordered a search alert and mobilized everyone in the Empire Guild to find him. He emphasized that no one should engage him. Instead, they should inform him that they were Sunjun's subordinates and bring him to the guild. As he left, Sunjun wondered where his brother had been all this time. He decided to deal with the girl who had left the tower with Seiwu. He asked if she was the one who had exited the tutorial tower. Embarrassed, she admitted that she was, but clarified that she hadn't done anything. It was the other guy who did everything. However, they had left together. Sunjun noted that she had left faster than expected, so she must have gained some talent. She timidly mentioned that she didn't know if it was a good thing, but she had obtained a ranking skill. Upon hearing this, Sunjun decided to recruit her into the guild even before the final evaluation. He promised to adjust the contract terms to her liking and suggested that she sign with the Empire Guild. He basically offered her a personal contract. Did it come with a dental plan? She was extremely happy and asked if he was serious. At that moment, someone arrived and commented that, despite the name Empire, the guild acted more like a gang of criminals. Sunjun recognized the person by his voice and warned him to watch his words. It was the hunter Ryu Jivan, and Srank Hunter. Jivan sarcastically asked if Sunjun was offended, Saying he had chosen his words carefully, the other rank hunter, Choi Sung, master of the White Lion Guild, commented that it looked like Sunjun had been outplayed. If this were an anime, this would be the moment his glasses glowed ominously. It seemed that everyone had gathered after being contacted by the association. Jivan observed the security team and speculated that the unregistered awakened individual mentioned by the association was the one responsible. Kneeling down, he commented that this person was quite bold for causing trouble as soon as they exited the tower. These people leave the tower and are already ready to fight, like a true shonen protagonist. Choi Sung agreed and suggested that the person likely had a high-level ability. Making them a first-rate talent, Jivan proposed that whoever found the individual first would have the right to claim them no matter the method. What a great way to say finders, keepers. Choi Sung agreed, saying they should search individually but keep each other informed. Before leaving, Choi Sung handed a card to the girl and told her to take her time choosing, as anyone would accept her with her awakened abilities. Jivan left, promising to reach out if he found the person. Sunjun knew that Jivan wouldn't keep that promise. He already seemed like that one friend who says, "I'll check and let you know," and then never replies outside. Jivan ordered his assistant to gather all crank and drank hunters from Younggang, form a team, and tell them to find Min Sunjun's brother. Basically setting up a side quest for NPCs. Scene change. Sewoo went to a nearby restaurant and ordered fried chicken. Fry commented that after returning to Earth after 100 years, the first place he went was one that only sold fried birds. Sewoo told him to just try it. He'd understand why he ran there like a madman. After eating for a while, Fry exclaimed, "What the hell, this is insane. I wasted my whole life. Is this the golden legacy of fried birds? Is this how it was supposed to be?" The taste was incredible. He asked Sewoo how he had survived in the demon realm for 100 years without eating something like this. Was he a psychopath? Sewoo told Fry to shut up. "You're messing with my humanity." Fry responded, "Fine. Then hurry up and give me more. Don't eat it all by yourself." But just to clarify, in this conversation between Fry and Sewoo, Fry's voice could only be heard by Sewoo and no one else. Meaning, to any outsider watching, Sewoo was just sitting there, devouring fried chicken and arguing with himself. Foolin' crazy guy in the city center vibes. After finishing his meal, Sewoo thanked the waiter and left the restaurant. As they walked through the city, Fry asked where he was going now. Sewoo responded, "Where else? Home, of course. Like any normal person would after a long day. Or in his case, centuries of chaos." After walking for a while, they arrived at his street. Finally, Sewoo had arrived home. Fry asked if that was really his house. Sewoo replied that it was, as he started to open the gate. Like, wow, the nostalgia. He immediately felt the emotion of returning to the place where he was born. Or at least where he had grown up until the apocalypse knocked on the door. But the moment he stepped inside, his face paled. Suddenly, he heard a voice asking if he was back. Sewoo, overwhelmed, thought, "Oh, how nice, my mother still remembers me." Then came his father's voice, saying he was late, and his mother asking if he was hungry. Mothers, right? Always asking that. Even in the middle of an epic post-apocalyptic drama. They were ready to eat, so he should call his younger brother, Sunjun, but all of that was just a memory, a recollection of when his parents were still alive and he was younger. Probably eating that famous soybean stew. Soybean stew? He thought not everyone dreams about that. But he seemed to think it was a great idea. His mother told them to wash their hands before eating. And he thought, now that's proper manners, if only I had soap here. Back to reality, Sewoo realized that his home was in ruins, completely destroyed. And no one was there anymore. The cold, lifeless air surrounded him. And he didn't even have a t-shirt that said, "I survived the demon realm," to show off. Sewoo just stood there stunned, unable to say a word. After a while, he slowly sat down, thinking it would be a good time for some tea. But no tea either. He muttered that he still couldn't remember his parents' faces. Oh yeah, that whole memory loss thing. Probably because I spent 100 years in a demon realm, huh? Though they say forgetting things is a gift from God, to him it was a curse. 100 years in the demon realm, an endless bloodbath on a strange, violent planet. Maybe a little detox after that, huh? He thought, the numbing of human senses and the halt of time, the wearing tear on his body and mind for an unbearably long period. It felt like the course of forgetting would erase him completely. So, he held on, desperately clinging to the only two memories he had before entering the demon realm. The memories of his younger brother and the memories of his disciples. These memories didn't just remain as recollections, instead, they grew into obsessions and persistent attachments. But that was fine with them. I survived for 100 years. They were more resilient than Wi-Fi at Grandma's house, and also, thanks to that guy Fry, who had accompanied him throughout the entire demon realm. Fry then commented that Seiwa's house felt lonely. The place they lived in back in the demon realm seemed cozier in comparison. Seiwa replied that yeah, but there was no fried chicken in the demon realm. Fry agreed logically that was correct. There was nothing more to say on the matter. With a smile, Seiwa said that either way he only intended to visit once. Might as well leave now, just a quick visit, like dropping by your aunt's house. But without the carrot cake, he didn't want to waste any more time there. He suggested they start looking for the kids. He wondered if everyone had been doing well over the past 10 years. I hope my brother, Sunjun, still has that troublemaker face, but with more muscles. He thought, but suddenly, as he walked, a voice echoed. We found him, and in the same instant, Seiwa was surrounded by a group of men, gang members, armed to the teeth. Like one of those moments in a movie where you know things are about to go south, but you're not sure exactly how yet. Up on the rooftop, a red-haired guy who seemed to be the leader smirked. It was a pain finding this bastard, he said. Seiwa, resisting the urge to make a joke about his hair, simply looked at the guy. The guy looked back at Seiwa and said, Nice to meet you. You must be the one who caused that mess outside the tower, right? And as if this were totally normal, he introduced himself. My name is Byun Hakmun, a Syrinx hunter from Vajra. Nice to meet you. Maybe a little peace and love before the shooting starts? He then asked Seiwa if he had any idea how long they had been looking for him. Seiwa just thought, and what exactly am I supposed to do with that information? Comfort them? Clearly, he wasn't much for sentimental responses. Hakmun got irritated and asked if Seiwa hadn't heard that they were from the Vajra Guild. Seiwa responded, Vajra or whatever, I don't care. He then asked what they wanted from him. Unless Vajra was the name of some exotic candy, he wasn't going to waste his time. Hakmun said it seemed like Seiwa didn't understand his situation, so they'd make him crawl on all fours. With a smile, Seiwa responded, It'll be the other way around. Seriously? That's the plan? If you want, it'll even help, but only if there's a prize at the end. The hunter world was really a mess these days. Now even gorillas were becoming hunters. What a wonderful world this had become. Hakmun was furious when he heard that. You're gonna regret this. They needed to teach him a lesson before taking him away. His body began to glow with electricity in the blink of an eye. He charged at Seiwa. Oh, hold on. Did this guy just turn into Superman? With a loud bang, his punch sent Seiwa flying. His body crashed through a wall on the other side of the street. But even while soaring through the air, his hands stayed in his pockets. Because, of course, who needs hands when you've got style? He looked completely calm, as if nothing had happened. With a dry laugh, Hakmun cursed at him, demanding to know who he was calling a gorilla. The rest of the gang members laughed, saying that the insignificant little guy had pissed off the boss. This guy is like a fly that just won't leave your face. Huh? They said Seiwa had passed out before even pulling his hands out of his pockets. Truly, Seiwa was the king of ill. Make an impact without moving a muscle. They told Hakmun to hit him again just to make sure. Who knows, maybe he'd die this time, but Seiwa remained lying there. Completely unbothered, he was looking at a system notification. Let's see if the system has any tips for me here. Oh, a new skill? Was he about to level up? Seiwa used the system to check Hakmun's power and stats. The system revealed that Hakmun was rank C, and his ability was instant acceleration, which doubled his speed. If the user's physical strength and body structure could handle it, they could move even faster. Seiwa then turned to Fry. Hey, wanna eat this ability? Fry replied that it was his first time eating an ability since arriving on Earth, so he wanted to try it. First times are always special, right? And I'm not even talking about abilities. Say shrugged. Alright, then in an instant he stood up. Hackman and the rest of the gang were stunned. Wait, they thought he had passed out, but he just stood up? What the hell is going on here? But before anyone could react, Seiwa moved at the speed of light and knocked Hackman out with a single strike, slamming his face into the ground. It was like a warm embrace, but for his face. As he hit the ground, Hackman's mind reeled. What the hell just happened? This guy was faster than light, and he couldn't even feel his energy. The rest of the gang was in shock. Wait, he just took down the boss with one hit? Are you serious? Then Seiwa reached out his hand and activated his ability. He commanded the predator to absorb Hackman's power immediately. Talismans began to surround Hackman after a moment. The extraction was complete now. Seiwa had acquired the rank C instant lightning ability. Along with all of Hackman's attributes. With a dry laugh, Seiwa muttered, "So this predator skill works on Earth too. Guess it's time to have some fun." Fry commented that it was nice, but it tasted worse than chicken. The rest of the gang was furious. One of them gritted his teeth and shouted for everyone to attack Seiwa at once. They all charged forward, yelling a battle cry, but Seiwa remained completely unfazed. He turned to Fry and said, "Let's test out our brand new ability on these guys. Nothing like a fresh new skill to level up a fight, right?" Fry grinned. "Got it." In the blink of an eye, Seiwa's body lit up with lightning just like Hackman's had before. No, he wasn't Superman. He was Thor's long-lost cousin, but since Seiwa was stronger and his body was more durable, he could move even faster than the original owner of the ability. In an instant, he vanished. And before the gang members could even react, boom, Seiwa took them down one by one. It was like ordering a pizza and having it show up 10 minutes early. They had no idea what hit them, only realizing when their bodies hit the ground, unconscious. One of them thought, "Damn it, I should have just stayed home and watched Netflix." One gang member, perhaps slightly smarter than the rest, tightened his grip on his dagger, reinforcing his body and preparing to strike. But Seiwa effortlessly dodged it, as if the attack was moving in slow motion. "Buddy, your attack was so slow that even dial-up internet is faster." Then, he kicked the guy in the stomach, making him cough up blood, and just like that, Seiwa stole another ability, Vital Strike. Time to give everyone a free checkup on their weak points. When activated, the ability automatically targeted an opponent's vital spots, making attacks more efficient, especially when using a weapon. Seiwa sighed, "This blade is dull as hell. Anyone got a pair of scissors? Because this thing is blinder than me on a Sunday morning. Who the hell fights with a dull blade?" Still, he decided to borrow it for now. Borrowing isn't stealing, okay? Combining Vital Strike with Instant Lightning, he moved at light speed, targeting the remaining gang members. But just as he was about to drive the blade into one of their necks, a voice called his name. Seiwa paused. The voice was so familiar that he turned to see who it was. And when he did, he was shocked. It was his younger brother, Sunjun. Now grown up after 10 years. With a smile, Sunjun called out to his older brother. 20 years ago, the portals opened in a peaceful world, plunging everything into chaos. Ah yes, the day everything went wrong. Basically, the day the Wi-Fi went out and never came back the same. Everyone panicked, confused, and clueless. No one had any idea what was happening because it was the first time they had ever seen anything like it. Then, suddenly, monsters began pouring out of the portals. And with them came the first awakened humans, people whose powers activated the moment the portals appeared. At the time, there were no policies or laws to deal with the situation. It was a survival of the fittest era. Basically, a giant reality show, but without any rules. In this chaotic world, two brothers, Seiwa and Sunjun, who had lost their parents at a young age, had to survive by any means necessary. Seiwa, the older brother, was one of the first awakened humans. He dropped out of school to become a hunter and support Sunjun, who was still a helpless baby. Back then, Sunjun had asked his older brother, "Aren't you going to school today?" Seiwa had simply answered, "There's no class today. I'm going to work survival class. That's already worth more than any math test." With a sigh, Sunjun asked if it was because of him, if that was why Seiwa had been skipping school. But Seiwa flicked him on the forehead and said, "No, It was just because he was terrible at studying, so he decided on his career early. I just chose to be a hunter instead of a nerd. It was more practical. Holding his stomach, Sunjun asked, so when are you coming back? Will it take long? Are you going on a 10-year trip and just showing up now? 10-year delay, just like my package from China. With a smile, Sewa reassured him not to worry, that he'd be back soon. But since that day, no one ever heard from Sewa again. It has now been 10 years since he left, and he never returned. Now, after finishing a battle, Sewa made his way to his younger brother's house and was surprised to see a massive, well-built building. He looked out the window and was even more surprised to see the Han River so close. Sunjun must have hired Tony Stark's architectural team, he thought. So Sunjun bought this place all by himself? No loans? He felt happy seeing his younger brother's success. Sunjun, however, shrugged it off, saying it wasn't anything special. All the money came from the skills I learned from you, Sayu. So it's the inheritance of Big Brother's ninja skills. It was a house meant for both of them to live in. That's why there was a room for him too. But looking at his older brother, Sunjun thought, I don't believe this. Is this really my older brother? Someone we couldn't find for years suddenly shows up after 10? It's like leveling up from missing for 10 years to him back. But no big deal. After glancing around the place, Sayu asked Sunjun if there really was a room for him. Wow, now I can take care of my little brother. I'm like that uncle who randomly shows up on your birthday. He praised Sunjun for working hard over the past 10 years, but with a smile. Sunjun rejected the praise. No, the one who worked the hardest was my older brother. With a sigh, Sunjun asked if Sayu even realized how much they had searched for him. Where have you been all this time? And why are you only showing up now? With a smile, Sayu patted his head and told him to sit down. He had 100 years worth of stories to tell. Sit down, 'cause here comes a story. Sometime later, they sat with some drinks and snacks, a laptop in front of them. Family meeting. Snacks included. This is how we solve things. Sayu then told everything, how he entered the demon world and how he made his way back to Earth. Sunjun, you won't believe the wild adventure your older brother went on. After hearing the story, Sunjun summed it up. So, 10 years ago, when you defeated the 4th demon lord, you got transported to another dimension by an artifact he had in that world. You met the Predator, a being that could extract people's abilities. Over 100 years, you grew stronger with that skill and searched for dragons with dimensional magic. Seems like you spent more time in another dimension than I did waiting for the bus. You eventually reached the Dragon King, defeated him, and took an orb from his heart. Then you used that orb to return to Earth. Is that everything? Basically, an epic journey of dragons, artifacts, and time jumps? Sayu confirmed it and added that the Predator, whom he called Fry, also crossed into Earth with him and was now inside his body. Sunjun was shocked. Inside your body? Is this some kind of possession or something? Is Fry like a freeloading spirit that doesn't pay rent? Sayu explained that instead of possession, it was more like a parasite. You know, that friend who always shows up but never pitches in for expenses? Yeah, kinda like that. Hearing this, Fry got irritated and asked Sayu if he wanted to have bloody diarrhea. Sayu then told his younger brother not to take it too seriously. He knew it sounded absurd, but at the very least, Sunjun should know your older brother isn't crazy. Or at least, not more than usual. Sunjun replied, of course, I believe you. After all, you're my brother, and honestly, we don't even live in a world where this kind of thing sounds absurd anymore. I just didn't immediately connect it to anything. I mean, who hasn't heard a story like this? Like, oh yeah, my friend got abducted by aliens and came back with superpowers, totally normal. Either way, he told Sayu that, for now, what mattered was that he was back from a 10-year trip. No boarding pass, no luggage, just, hey, I'm your long-lost brother. Sayu grinned. Right. Now it's my turn to ask, what happened to you during the last 10 years? Who allowed a guy like Choi Dae-sung to become president? Sunjun explained that ever since Sayu disappeared, Choi Dae-sung shamelessly took credit for defeating the 4th Demon King. With that lie, he earned the title of the greatest hunter of the first generation, and using that fabricated status, he climbed his way to the presidency. Now, he keeps creating politicians who harm their guild. Classic, right? Gets famous by lying and still lands a job. Sunjun said he couldn't wait to see Choi Dae-sung's face when he found out his older brother was back. I can already imagine it. He's gonna try to come up with an excuse, but it'll be as convincing as a kid saying they didn't break the vase. Sayu added, these guys' intentions are obvious. He's the only SS rank in South Korea. That's ridiculous. He must have done something to stay the only SS rank all this time. Either he signed a pact with the devil or he's just really good at cheating. Sayu then asked, by the way, those guys who attacked me earlier, those John gang, could they be Choi Daesung's goons? No, Choi Daesung's guild is called Infinity. There are several major guilds in South Korea, collectively known as Reptogram. Sunjun's guild, Empire, is one of them. The others are Infinity, Vidra, White Lion, Warrior Fighter, Blue Flower, and Frozen Soul. Now we just need to decide which one to join in the future. Reptogram, the guild universe in waiting for the spin-off. Sunjun explained that among them, Vidra is the second largest guild, led by a second-generation hunter named Rudy. With a wicked smile, Sunjun said, "Head, take care of today's problem, Sayu, you don't need to worry." Noticing the sinister grin on Sunjun's face, our protagonist thought that his younger brother had become a bit rougher and more ruthless over the 10 years they were apart. My cute little brother turned into a tough guy? What's going on, Sejun? Sayu then asked, by the way, what about my disciples? Huh? You mean your apprentice heroes? Are they in the superhero league now? Sunjun was a bit shocked and said they had all gone their separate ways long ago and no longer kept in touch. Zilong went back home, and Kong and Yeoin are now under Choi Disu. Sayu blinked. Well, that's an unexpected twist. They joined Choi Disu? But what about Minjun? Sunjun answered, Minjun is dead. Great, another plot twist. I'm starting to think this world is just full of them. Hearing this, the protagonist was stunned. What? He died? Who killed him? Did they find the culprit? Minjun, my man, who did this to you? Now I have more questions than answers. Sunjun explained that Minjun's body disappeared, so they never found out who was responsible. The only ones capable of killing a hunter were other hunters or unregistered awakened individuals. Or maybe his body was abducted by aliens. You never know, right? At the time, even HMCS was involved in the investigation, but no progress was made. Sayu was confused. What's HMCS? What does it stand for? Sunjun explained that HMCS was the Hunter Crime Special Unit, an international agency that operated on the front lines of hunter-related crimes. They had the authority to investigate and arrest all awakened criminals, so, basically, they're hunter police or like the ninja version of the police. Just with more special abilities and less paperwork. Sayu then asked Sunjun, do you happen to have any connections there? Because if you do, go ahead and say hi to the crew for me. Sunjun said yes, but then asked, are you really planning to join them? If you need an investigation, you should use our guild's intelligence team instead. Our guild has a ninja investigation team? If so, I'm signing up. Sunjun advised Sayu not to get involved with a place that dangerous. That's like the shady side of the club where fights always break out. Don't go there, man. But Sayu replied, it's fine, I don't just need information, I need something else. Oh, we know a good old dose of revenge, right? With a sigh, Sunjun told his older brother, hunters deal with crimes like murder. Going there now is too soon, you just got back to Earth. You should rest and regain your combat sense. Relax, take a deep breath, and grab a coffee. Too soon to save the world again, bro. But Sayu reassured his younger brother. I spent 100 years in the demon world. What haven't I done? What battle haven't I fought? After all, who else has the resume of a world champion in demon battles? Hearing this, Sejun said, oh right, I almost forgot. Before leaving Earth, my older brother gave himself a nickname. He was called the God of Battle and the first awakened hunter of the first generation. Damn, even I'm impressed by that title. God of Battle? Sounds like a superhero name. Even after 20 years, he should still have his combat sense intact. The guy never loses his touch, no matter how much time passes, just like that friend who plays soccer on the weekends and thinks he's Neymar. Sunjun then said, he told Sayu about a man named E.G. who was a manager at HMCS. He would try to contact him. E.G.? Does he have a superhero photo too? Let's find out. Meanwhile, Sayu looked at the laptop, analyzing the information Sunjun had just shared. She muttered, oh no, here comes deja vu. Is it that guy from the cafe? Or just another villain with a mysterious face? After looking at the photo, Sunjun was surprised to see who it was. Looks like someone isn't ready for a reunion. Huh? He said that the man was Wong, the leader of HMCS's Gangbuk district team, a fifth-generation hunter and one of the first-generation hunters in the world. So, Basically, a hunter from the prehistoric era. If he were a Pokemon, he would have evolved about 10 times by now. He asked, and Sayu answered, his real name is Jengu. 2 days later, at the HMCS headquarters, inside the Gangbuk team office, the team leader was shouting, "Oh boy! Looks like someone had too much coffee today." He said that these second-generation guys didn't know anything. He was furious, and his assistant asked what was wrong. Jengu replied that he had just received an order from above. They had assigned a new rookie to his team. Of course, the rookie is always the target of the veteran's rage, right? Might as well rename him to Walking Problem. Jengu sneered, saying he didn't like them, these greenhouse-raised guys. Their old brains must be rotting. Greenhouse-raised? What is this, a horde of lab-grown superheroes? Hearing this, the assistant smiled and thought to himself, who's the real old man here? But Jengu didn't stop. Still irritated, he continued. Back in the old days, during the Lala Zone, when everyone first awakened, the early days of hunters were all about brute force. They even wrote wills before heading out on missions because they could die at any moment. Wow, these guys were like war movie characters, just missing a sad piano song in the background. He added, by the way, have I ever told you about the time I died in an attack 10 years ago? The assistant sighed, yes, I've heard this story 1,000 times. The assistant deserves an award for patience. He probably knows the story by heart. But Jengu wasn't done. He ignored the assistant's reaction and started reminiscing again. Oh no, here we go again. Listen to this. When I was a rookie, I took a fatal blow, and my group was on the brink of death, about to lose a lot of time. This guy has more drama than a telenovela. But at that moment, a healer with incredible abilities appeared, saving me and my entire team. As he said this, he mentioned the name by Angu. At that instant, the office door swung open forcefully, and a voice echoed, repeating the exact same name, by Angu. The team leader was shocked, turning toward the door to see who else could say that iconic name. Time for the big reveal. Who is the mysterious character? It was Sayu. He asked Jengu why he had changed his name. That just confuses people. He asked if Jengu remembered him. He was the savior from that time. Upon recognizing him, Jengu started sweating. His expression shifted to pure shock. What? Hunter Min Sayu? What is he doing here after 10 years? Jengu looked more shocked than when the restaurant bill arrives and the credit card statement comes in too. Jengu introduced Sayu as a new hunter who had joined the Gangbuk team. New recruit? This guy has more history than most veterans, my friend. Since he was a new member, Jengu emphasized that there was a lot of information Sayu didn't know yet, so he instructed the team to provide it to him whenever necessary. He also reminded everyone that, as veterans, they should treat the new recruit with the utmost respect. Yeah, sure, but veteran respect is like grandparent respect. Listen to what I say, but do things your way. A girl named Song muttered to another guy, saying that Jengu's behavior was contradictory. It's strange for the great team leader to act like this. Looks like Jengu is trying to impress someone with this little act. Huh? But all anyone really cares about is where the coffee is. The guy told her to keep quiet, suggesting that, judging by the team leader's reaction, Sayu was definitely no ordinary recruit. Jengu then instructed Song to follow him to the conference room for a quick briefing for the new recruit. Another member questioned whether Sayu might actually be a 3-star hunter who had entered as a rookie. In the conference room, Jengu politely asked Sayu if he wanted coffee, and if so, whether he preferred mixed or Americano mixed. Dude, he even made choosing coffee feel like a top-secret mission. Sayu replied, mixed coffee? This guy has the style of a master. I bet he doesn't even hesitate when making tough decisions. The guy humbly showed Sayu the HMCS deployment uniform and asked for his size. Song, confused, said she hadn't received any instructions despite the briefing and didn't know what kind of information she was supposed to provide to the new recruit. As the data manager for HMCS's Gangbuk team, she had no idea what was expected of her. Look at the panic. They sent me here, but they didn't even tell me what to do. Sayu said he needed the records of all hunters who had died in the last 20 years. He asked her to summarize the data and send it to him. 20 years? What's next? A list of all the hunters' typos. Surprised, she mentioned that 20 years of data was a lot and that they would have to submit a report to the Hunters Association. Oh yeah, sure, no pressure, just 20 years of data and maybe a few more decades of memories. Jengu interrupted, yelling that she had enough experience to figure it out on her own. He then approached Sayu with a coffee and assured him that the data manager would handle it quickly and efficiently. It's always nice to see that Jonggu is the type of boss who makes everything sound easier. All that's left is for him to say, "I knew you could do it." Jong adjusted his glasses and asked Sayu if he was referring to human deaths. "Excuse me? Human deaths? Sounds like a horror movie title. What's next? Coffee with death?" Sayu clarified that he was referring to cases officially recognized as murder by HMCS. He also requested a list of fugitive hunters who were still on the run, murder and fugitive hunters. This sounds more like a video game mission than a corporate meeting. He gripped his coffee cup angrily because killing an awakened individual was nearly impossible unless the attacker was also an awakened one of equal strength. If someone managed to kill a high-level hunter like Minjun, the culprit was probably a professional. Even if the culprit had already been caught or killed, if they were awakened, there would be a record of them in the organization. So, we can say that whoever did this was more trained than a first-generation ninja? For now, tracking them was the priority. She asked where to send the information, and Sayu instructed her to send it to his phone for now. Of course, everything on the phone. Who needs a laptop when you have a smartphone, right? Someone entered and informed Younggu that they had received a request for police support. A turf war had broken out between gangs, including awakened members. A gang war? This thing is turning into a cop drama. But the fight isn't over, it just changed stages. Younggu was inclined to let the police handle it, thinking it only involved low-level thugs. Oh sure, let the police handle it, except now they have to deal with awakened ones. So it's like switching from easy mode to impossible mode. But then the guy mentioned that one of the gangs was Cerberus. Wait a second, Cerberus? That sounds like a rock band name. Younggu found this problematic, leading Sayu to ask what Cerberus was. Sun explained that Cerberus was on a completely different level from normal gangs. They were involved in arms trafficking, contract killings, and even the alleged trafficking of hunters. Upon hearing about hunter trafficking, Sayu became interested and suggested they go together. At a shop, a battle had just taken place. Many bodies were scattered across the floor. Yikes, they didn't even get to use their instant noodle discount coupons before getting wiped out. Or maybe they did, but they're going straight down. Kanhu, the second-in-command of the Cerberus Guild, started commenting that the captain of the Bloodless Reaper field unit was nothing special, at least not in front of him. Wow, that confidence, like he's saying, "Guys, I already won the best boss trophy, but if you want, I can leave a little space for you." The red-haired guy, Jakin, Cerberus third-in-command, argued back, saying it was unfair for Kanhu to talk like that since half the enemies had been taken down by his cleaver. Kanhu laughed and told Jakin that if he felt left out, he should try beating him. Jakin replied that Kanhu should just wait, one day he would defeat him. How about a contest to see who has the most free time? Because waiting is a rare skill around here. Kanhu laughed and commented that they were useless without him. He was happy to have left being a hunter behind and joined the organization. Another guy asked Kanhu if they should start marking territory. Kanhu agreed, declaring that the place now belonged to Cerberus. Suddenly, an explosion occurred. Jakin panicked and asked who was responsible. Was there still a Bloodless Reaper lurking around? I knew this place would turn into a fireworks show sooner or later. The one responsible for the explosion was Sayu. Jakin shouted at Kanhu, asking if he realized that messing with HMCS would complicate things. While they were arguing, Sayu appeared and commented that, judging by the way Kanhu spoke, he must have killed some hunters in his life. Sayu said he should show more of his abilities. The members of Cerberus had no idea who Sayu was, wondering who he thought he was to show up alone. Oh, look at that, the guy arrives at the party uninvited and still makes you question whether you should have sent him an invitation. Jakin, worried, asked Kanhu what they should do since Sayu didn't seem to have the demeanor of a public official. Yeah, Jakin, he seems more like a secret agent than a government employee. Kanhu told them that the only option was to show their strength, so he activated his ability. Full body armor, a rank B skill that formed an invisible armor over his entire body. Its duration depended on the caster's mana, increasing physical defense by 30 and magical defense by 10. The classic and invisible armor. Now he just needs to say, "I'm invincible except in moments of weakness." They charged at Sayu, but before Kanhu understood what was happening, he had a vision of someone on the other side of a river, his grandfather waving at him. Kanhu was crying on the ground, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that all his comrades had been killed, leaving him as the only survivor. Nobody likes spoilers, but this must be the moment where everything went wrong in the script of his life. Sayu told Fry to devour Kanhu's rank B ability. Fry was excited since it was a decent skill. Kanhu couldn't believe they had all lost to just one man. He asked Sayu why he had taken things so far. Kanhu, sometimes life isn't just about surviving. Sometimes it's about making a grand finale better than any action movie out there. Desperate, Kanhu insisted that they had never killed a hunter. They had only survived with their bodies. Sayu admitted that he knew they had never killed hunters. Either way, he had never thought weaklings like them were capable of it. Kanhu then asked why Sayu had attacked them. Sayu replied that he wanted to check how strong the awakened criminals had become since they seemed like a lost cause. Basically, the guy just wanted to test the difficulty level of the game. It was better to eliminate them early. Junggu and the others rushed to the scene. Junggu asked if Sayu was okay since they had just finished clearing the upper floor of the club. So Sayu, all good? Or did you leave the mess for us? As always, Sayu, ignoring the concern, commented that they took their time. He then placed his foot on Kanhu's head and told Junggu that he spared a high-ranking boss and killed the rest. He asked if that was acceptable. Junggu replied that, technically, capturing them should have been the priority, but if Sayu had been attacked first, it was allowed. Since HMCS operated as an international organization, they followed standard regulations. Thus, agents were required to wear body cameras to verify the legitimacy of their actions. Junggu couldn't believe Sayu had exterminated the Cerberus guild. Despite his cruelty, although Sayu was known as the Mad Dog, Junggu had never realized how brutal he was. Sayu sheepishly admitted that he forgot to use his body camera and, in a low voice, asked Junggu to cover for him. Junggu, having no choice, reluctantly agreed. Of course, no camera who hasn't been there? But hey, you're not paying me enough to be an accomplice in the soap opera. Sayu added that he had been hit first, pointing to the blood on his clothes. Junggu assured him that he believed him, though it was obvious he didn't. It was clear the blood wasn't Sayu's. Meanwhile, someone made a call to Girth. A hunter from Hankia of the Hong Kong Red Guild. An informant told Girth that the Cerberus Guild had been completely wiped out, without even being able to fight back. The second-in-command, Kang Hu, had been captured, while the third-in-command, Jae Kim, the one they had been instructed to monitor, was dead. Girth finally arrived in South Korea, and at the airport, a group of men approached him. One of the men, someone over the phone, that Girth, the hunter affiliated with the Hong Kong Red Guild, had just entered the country and that they were now heading to the designated location. One of the men approached Girth, bowed to him, and said, "May the deceased rest in peace." He introduced himself as Lee Jong-yong from the Korean Hunters Association. Without acknowledging the greeting, Girth asked where his brother was. "So, Lee Jong, what's up? Where's my brother, man?" Jong-yong replied that the body of the suspect Jae Kim was currently at the Hunters Forensic Medicine Department. He said that Girth would have to accompany them to verify the body, complete the necessary procedures, and then be escorted to his designated accommodation. Necessary procedures? Well, does their accommodation include Wi-Fi and a jacuzzi? Or is it just a dark room? With an ironic smile, Girth said, a suspect? So, you're trying to tell me that my younger brother is now a suspect? He then asked the men in suits if it was true that the person responsible for his brother's death was affiliated with HMCS. If that's true, HMCS is going to have a lot of explaining to do. The men responded that they couldn't answer any questions related to that with a serious face. Girth then asked if he was allowed to leave the premises outside the schedule hours. Wait, is he going to ask for permission like a student at school? The officers replied that this was not allowed. He was to remain in his designated accommodation until his pre-scheduled departure date. Of course, Girth, just wait there like it's a 5-star hotel, except there's no Wi-Fi, no breakfast, nothing. If he left without authorization under the International Hunters Law, he would face forced deportation, along with disciplinary actions and appropriate penalties. Forced deportation? Girth's about to feel like he just got banned from an online game. Since he had already been informed of all the rules and regulations, they told him they would now escort him to the forensic medicine department. Girth's face was red with rage, but he tried not to show it. He's fuming, and who wouldn't be? It must feel like he made a mistake in the game, except the penalty is way worse, he muttered to himself, so they're just letting me wander around inside the apartment without being able to leave? Is that what they're saying? The guy must be feeling like a prisoner of war in his own apartment. Like, I'm here, but where's my freedom, people? But the officers were already heading out. Expecting him to follow as they were leaving, Girth called out to the man beside him. Rio responded, yes, sir. Girth told Rio, find them. Who killed my little brother? Then they began following the officers. As they walked, Girth said, whoever killed my brother. They'll find them, he'll rip out their hearts while they're still alive and make sure they feel pain. Oh, Girth is pissed, the guy is about to make everyone suffer. Meanwhile, in another scene, Sayu was talking to his younger brother. Sunjun told Sayu that 2 days after Minjun's murder, the house had been completely ransacked. But Sayu still wasn't convinced. He explained, a hunter's mana is like a fingerprint. It can reveal their code, attributes, and rankings, right? The guy just compared mana to fingerprints. Now I'm wondering, can fingerprints be used to rip someone's head off? At the time, the hunters and investigators assumed the culprit had taken everything to erase any trace of their presence. The house had been completely looted 2 days after the murder. Not a single item containing Minjun's mana remained, but Sayu questioned, are you sure it was the real culprit who did this? What if it was just a random robbery? It's not like the real culprit had to be the one who trashed the place. Pointing at the list, he continued, if you look at the list of stolen items, most of them were valuable, and with that level of mess, there's an even higher chance of leaving behind evidence. Sayu added, if erasing traces of mana was really the goal, burning the house down would have been a much easier option. Whoa there, buddy, the Bernatal approach isn't always the best solution. Sunjun asked Sayu if he was saying someone took advantage of the empty house after Minjun was killed. Sayu replied, yes, he had reviewed HMCS crime records, and there were more cases like this than he expected. As he left, he said, looks like we need to mend some fences. Sunjun was confused. What was he planning? Even though it had taken a while to resell Minjun's house, many years had passed. There was no way Minjun's belongings were still around. But with a smile, Sayu replied, we won't know unless we check. Then he simply said, see you tonight. A few weeks passed. But Sayu, despite his confidence, still hadn't found any clues. He was so sure of himself, thinking this would be an easy job. I'm so good at this, I could open my own detective agency. With a discount on coffee, of course. Sayu exploded in frustration. Why the hell are there so many damn thieves in this tiny country? It had been a week, and he hadn't found a single piece of evidence or the real thief. Fry said, I have a good instinct, trust your big brother. He'll point you in the right direction. Then he told Sayu to go right. Oh, what's this? That instinct is sharper than Google Maps GPS. He didn't even complain, he just listened. Assuming that, for now, Fry was his older brother. And he went to the right, but after following the indicated path, he screamed and exploded, releasing all the anger that had been boiling inside him. It's a dead end, you idiot. Oh, right, this GPS really tricked me. Again next time, I'll use ways. But Fry smiled because his instincts weren't wrong. Suddenly, Sayu heard some people talking in the distance, and a voice said, did you hear the rumors? Sayu quickly hid to eavesdrop on the conversation. The ones talking were a man with a rat's head, conversing with his boss, a man whose face looked like a hamburger. This scene is like a deep web version of Ratatouille. The rat-headed man said, the HMCS has been cracking down hard on the receivers. Just yesterday, the entire Yongdianpo area was wiped out. The boss replied, seriously? Without even sending a report? Why would the HMCS do that? The rat-headed man explained to his boss, it's the HMCS, they have investigative authority over all operations worldwide. And they have the right to execute punishments on any awakened criminals on sight if they resist. If those guys catch him, he's not just going to jail. In other words, he either becomes a prisoner or becomes barbecue. Tough choice, he could end up dead. The boss exploded, saying, but they're just government dogs. If we kill them, that's it. The rat-headed man responded, true. Any skilled hunter prefers joining a guild, the pay is better. That's why there are no high rankers in organizations like the HMCS. But the one attacking the receivers this time isn't just some random lunatic. This is a fight between bosses now. And the guy is practically getting his degree in insanity. Then the man said, since we specialize in stolen goods from hunters, maybe we should relocate our warehouse this time so the HMC doesn't catch us. But just as they were about to leave, SIA stepped out from the shadows. Where exactly is this warehouse? Ah, classic SIA, the master of dramatic entrances. He has more grand entrances than Batman himself. Upon seeing him, the boss and the rat-headed man were startled. Who's there? The boss looked around nervously. SIA smirked. All right, time to confiscate your warehouse. Confiscate? Nah, my friend, I'd call it more of an unexpected visit without the invitation. Seeing him, the rat-headed man told his boss, that's him. The bastard from HMCS who's been taking down the receivers. The boss quickly grabbed his phone and started calling his men. Move your asses to Sector 2 now. This is an emergency, guys, this is a real emergency. But don't worry, we can still turn this mission into a movie. Or at least an animated series. But while the boss was making the call, SIA remained unfazed. He kept pressing them. Where is the warehouse? He said he was busy, then they should start talking. Unless they wanted to die, sir. I just wanted a map, no need for coffee. But that map would really help right now. A few minutes later, a group of men approached. One of them asked, Boss, what's going on? Who the hell is this guy? Oh, this guy? Just the biggest troublemaker in the galaxy. Check his resume. Is he an imposter? Is he really the one taking down the receivers? The boss laughed. He's an idiot who doesn't even know where he walked into. Even though he's from HMCS. If we bury him in concrete and dump him in the ocean, no one will ever find him. SIA tilted his head. What are these guys even saying? He was starting to think this situation was turning into something quite interesting. Uno reverse. He smiled internally like someone pulling an ace out of their sleeve. In reality, these guys were practically handing him his job on a silver platter. They had grouped up on their own. It was almost like they were lining up for his ability. He even thought, thanks, guys, you really didn't have to. Then, he turned to Fry with a mischievous grin. Let's use an ability for the first time in a while. Fry, always the comedian, replied, an ability? That'll cost a fried chicken meal as payment. Sayu, with the most serious face in the world, responded, deal, but make it a countryside-style fried chicken for a discount. The ability began to be cast. Lightning danced around his feet. A blinding light flooded the boss' eyes. Damn it, I can't see anything. With a thunderous crash that would make a storm jealous, Sayu unleashed the ability known as Shockwave. As the name implied, it affected everyone within range and electrocuted them like they were cell phones caught in a thunderstorm. The difference was that they weren't charging, they were being charged with electricity. Sayu, unfazed, walked up to the rat-headed man. So, ready to show me the warehouse now? The man trembled and stuttered. What the hell are you? Sayu smirked. Me? I'm a lunatic. Why? Well, humor is also part of the mission. Sometime later, they arrived at the warehouse and Sayu searched every corner. Finally, among all the junk, he found what he was looking for, a Manabuki, the crown jewel. Or rather, Minjun's research book. Fry raised an eyebrow looking at the book. This is the Manabuki you were desperate to find? Smells like nerd. Sayu nodded, keeping his composure. Yeah, it has a certain scent of Wi-Fi and coffee. I can recognize it from a mile away. But soon, he noticed a security spell on the book. It wasn't just any spell. It was an advanced formation that would only open with the owner's mana. Like when you try to open a jar of noodles, but the lid won't budge, and you need a superhero to do it for you. Fry asked, so the book won't open, right? Meaning you won't be able to read it? Sayu, with that I have a plan B. Look, replied. Doesn't matter. What I need isn't the book itself. What I want is the mana inside it, the essence, like a strong cup of coffee. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Yeah, it's me. There's a dozen awakened criminals here. Can we send in the cleanup crew? Oh, and bring the car too. We've got a place to go. Kind of like an Uber, but for criminals. In another scene, sometime later, Sayu arrived at the neutral battle zone, a place where underground techniques and bizarre abilities were traded. A market where you could find anything: potions, weapons, even an army of mechanics. A place called Black Skyfall. Inside one of the buildings, a woman played with a deck of cards. But it wasn't for fun, she was calculating like a shaman. Oh my. Looks like we have an interesting guest arriving. Sayu, observing the place, commented, not much has changed here in the past 10 years, the only difference is that now there's free Wi-Fi. This guy is seriously addicted to Wi-Fi and coffee. Fry, always the jokester, added. You're famous, buddy, everyone's looking at you. Must be your skills and stage presence. Sayu looked at him and, with a grin, replied, maybe, or maybe it's just the style. Only those who wear a lightning shield on their chest can be truly irresistible. Fry then suggested, what if you extracted someone's abilities and ate one of them? I heard some people are into weird skill buffs, but Sayu refused. No, that's like pissing off the waiter while he's bringing your order. And nobody wants to fight in a neutral zone. Especially when you already have a full combo of abilities. Suddenly, a woman blocked Sayu's path and said, it's been a while. She had been waiting for him. Sayu looked at her, and before she could continue, he thought, is she serious? Or has fate finally gotten tired of trolling me? Sometime later, the shaman and Sayu started discussing business. She observed that even after 10 years, he hadn't changed at all. Sayu gave an enigmatic smile and replied, yeah, I guess so. Looks like time is afraid of messing with me. She, too, was the same, still unnamed, and she asked, so, what have you been doing for the past 10 years that you never reached out? Sayu looked at her with the kind of smile that said he had the perfect answer. But he decided to play around instead. Oh, hero stuff. Saved the world, took down some villains. And between jobs, I kept trying to figure out where I left my car keys. Have you seen my house key? It's harder to find than good Wi-Fi at an airport. Extending the book, Sayu said that instead of continuing the conversation, he'd rather have her extract the mana from it. He was already in straight-a-thipa point mode, and the shaman, smiling, replied, always straight to business. Huh? The good old Sayu, that's something I still like about you. She brought out a cup and a knife, placing them beside the book, and asked, you remember how this works, right? Sayu shrugged. Of course, this is basically a hardcore version of making brigadeiro. Brazilian chocolate fudge balls, only instead of chocolate we have mana. Instead of a pan we have a knife. And instead of condensed milk, well, we have my hand. Basic stuff, really. He picked up the knife and cut his own hand, letting blood drip into the cup as it poured. He thought, this blood ritual will never stop being weird. It's like trying to sell a cookbook, but all the recipes turn out to be horror stories. This near-impossible feat, however, was possible thanks to unnamed the Manhwa. She defied the laws of nature with her illegal ability. A power that made the laws of physics stop and ask, what the hell is this? She took a sip of the mixed blood and commented, tastes like life itself is dancing on my tongue. All set, it's done. Sayu thought she's more of a gourmet vampire than a shaman. But hey, to each their own. Fresh and delicious blood, prepared more cleanly than ever. She smiled as if she had just tasted a gourmet dish. Fry, watching from a distance, thought, that woman's ability is definitely not this. But, hey, who am I to judge? I'm basically a demon sidekick. Sayu then took the ceramic flask and mixed his blood with the shaman's. Sealing a small contract, he thanked her for a job well done and prepared to leave. Oh, you're already leaving? She asked with an enigmatic smile. Sayu replied with an air of mystery. Yes, I still have things to do. They'll come back next time when, I lose another key. Or when I need a gourmet blood dish. She smiled and said, always so mysterious. What would I do without that touch of suspense? Now outside, Sayu sat in his car, ready to go home. Fry, however, looked more uncomfortable than a wet cat. That place gives me the creeps. I swear next time it'll bring a bunch of incense. I never want to go back there. Sayu looked at him with a smirk. Relax, Fry. The only danger there is the free Wi-Fi. Who cares about Wi-Fi, huh? Sayu frowned. Why was he being so picky today? Fry grumbled. You and that woman are two perverts, absolutely depraved. Sayu sighed. What are you even saying? I just made a small cut on my arm, no big deal. Fry relented. Fine, no need to insist on it. So where are we going now? Sayu answered, to the Ancient History Research Institute. That's where Minjun was murdered. Later, after driving for a while, they arrived at the institute. A building so tall it felt like a direct challenge to anyone afraid of heights. Without wasting time, Sayu walked to the door and opened it with such force that even the building itself must have thought, "Whoa, is this a break-in?" Fry sighed. "Now that you have power, are you just barging into places?" "This is trespassing." Sayu ignored his concern. "Don't worry, this building belongs to the Empire Guild. Shijin bought and preserved it. Lucky for us, his younger brother took care of this place from the start." Deep down, Sayu knew he wasn't the only one struggling to accept Minjun's death. Looking around, he could see memories of when they were all still together 10 years ago. Crouching down, he murmured, "I need to see the memory of that day when Minjun was killed." Fry hesitated. "Are you really going to use that ability?" Sayu answered, "Yes," with a dramatic boom straight out of an action movie. He activated the mana remembrance ability. The place became surrounded by talismans. It looked like they were opening a portal to summon some supreme entity. Or worse than that, past due bills. The exact level of this ability was unknown. But by using it, the emotions experienced by the owner of the mana at a certain location could be reproduced. The clarity of the manifestation depended on the amount and quality of mana used as a medium. Basically, if the mana was weak, the memory would be blurrier than a selfie taken while running. Opening the flask he had taken from the shaman, Sayu combined its contents with his own blood in Minjun's mana-infused book. It almost looked like a Harry Potter potion recipe, except with no instruction manual. As the mana spread throughout the area, it began revealing the incident, faint memories of what had happened. Fry sighed. Is Sayu unable to see the memories clearly because his mana reserves are so small? If this were a game, his mana bar would have been flashing red ages ago. Sayu replied, "There's nothing I can do. The mana remembrance ability doesn't show the target's memories, just their emotions." In other words, it was basically a high-level emotional detector like a telenovela drama meter, but without subtitles to make sense of what actually happened. Standing up, Sayu muttered to himself, "The Minjun I knew was never a weak hunter. If this was done so quickly by a single person, it means the culprit was either insanely skilled, or a cheat-level player using hockey in single-player mode." Now carefully observing the vague memory, Sayu noticed that before dying, Minjun said a few words. He tried to piece together what Minjun was saying. He managed to see the letters V, I, and P. He questioned whether they were in the correct order. Suddenly, he also noticed that the culprit was wearing a veil, making their face nearly invisible. Classic mysterious villain move, hiding their face like they were dodging debt collectors. The culprit then spoke a word: hierarchy. Now, piecing the puzzle together, Sayu wondered, VIP and hierarchy. So Minjun wasn't just part of the research institute, he was part of an organization. Or maybe he was just trying to say he wanted a membership of Heikelgend on YouTube. Noticing Sayu's expression, Fry asked if he was okay. Sayu wondered what Fry meant by that. Fry explained that back in the Demon Kingdom, Sayu always talked about his younger siblings and disciples. Even after 100 years, he never forgot them. The first thing he did upon arriving on Earth was search for them, and now, he had just watched his disciple die right before his eyes. Completely unfazed, did he have a heart of steel? Or was he just following the Batman method of dealing with trauma, pretending he felt nothing and beating up criminals at night? Sayu ignored Fry instead. He commented that Fry's vocabulary was improving, asking where he had learned such words. Fry responded that he learned from Sflix. Sflix? What was that? Did anyone know? Because Sayu had no clue. Fry then continued, saying that right now, Sayu's emotions were so intense that they were making him nauseous. But he wasn't showing it on the surface. Or was he simply unable to? Sayu answered that he was fine. After 100 years, his emotions were bound to collapse at some point. Basically, he was like Windows right before a crash. Speaking of which, my PC is totally bugging out. Anyone got a fix for that? Suddenly, the door creaked open. A man wearing a mask, clearly just an extra, called out to Sayu. "You're Min Sayu, right?" He scratched his head and added, "Where the hell have you been wandering all day? Seriously, making things so damn troublesome?" Yeah, this guy was definitely an NPC who just activated a side quest. Then, the extra continued, "Anyway, just come quietly, someone's dying to see you." But Sayu started counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He realized the guy wasn't alone, he brought 6 goons. In other words, he was exactly the type of villain who only felt brave when surrounded by backup. Sayu looked at him and said, "You act awfully arrogant for someone who walks around with 6 insignificant rats." The masked man frowned for a moment, surprised by the response. "You're sharp, Sayu, to figure that out so quickly. That makes things easier." Then, he gave Sayu 2 options: get tied up and come quietly. Resist and get cut before being dragged away bleeding. The classic "you can'cause but both choice suck" scenario. Without wasting time, Sayu raised both hands and acted like he was surrendering. It's better to follow you willingly than to get cut down. At least, that's what he made it seem like. The leader, convinced, ordered his subordinates, "Tie him up." "Yes, sir." One of the men stepped forward, and, yeah, his body got split in half, blood everywhere. A scene straight out of an rated movie. It's probably all blurred on your screen. "Sorry, but YouTube won't allow it." With a malicious smile, Sayu said, "Actually, I prefer the cutting option." Fry glanced at the remaining goons and made a casual remark that was a mistake, but honestly, you're all a bunch of fools. The goons, now in full-blown panic mode, screamed and charged at Sayu, ready to kill him. But before they could do anything, a figure emerged from the shadows and ordered them to stop. It was Girth from the Red Guild. "From here on out, I'll take control." Girth spoke coldly, asking if he were HMCS Hunter Sayu. Then, he growled angrily, whether he was the one who slew Jikin of Cerberus, his brother. 2 questions were consecutively asked, but tone was not uncertain. Fry didn't mind and just complimented Girth as the tastiest food in the world, whereas Sayu wasn't too sure about the brother he was referring to, as he never inquired about the names of the trash before he cleaned them up. These words instantaneously infuriated Girth. His face turned dark, just like he had hit the bottom of the abyss. Girth shouted, calling Sayu a bastard, and stamped his foot so vigorously that the ground creaked to build momentum. His right arm glowed brightly. Dashing to rip out his heart, Girth clenched his teeth and punched forcefully. Blood spurted from Sayu's body. Sayu, however, at once used healing to cure the wound, and smiled cheerfully, complimenting Girth as not bad, perhaps a rank or so. He scrunched his eyebrows, acknowledging Sayu was a healer. That only made him angrier, and he kept bumping into him, making him stumble backward a little. The masked men who were standing by and watching paled and sweated when they noticed Sayu could parry Girth's attack. They quickly cried out, wanting to run up to attack him en masse. But before they were able to do anything, Sayu materialized in front of the guy who uttered that. He didn't let anyone get in the middle of this duel. When Sayu was done talking, he utilized the lightning flash skill. Lightning bolts rained down, striking those within the vicinity of him. Sayu was extremely pleased, because it had been quite a while since he had such an engaging fight. Ryu, watching him easily discard the rats he brought, was taken aback that a healer such as he had a speed buff skill. He didn't know what he was, whereas Girth was extremely inattentive due to Sayu having broken down all of his movements and avoided them with little movement. Girth broke out in cold sweat. He had never encountered a speed-boosting hunter at the gate who had come this far with such accuracy. He wondered how broad his field of vision was. He was not an ordinary individual. Now that it had reached this point, he had to give it his best right away. Sayu, strangling a masked individual, inclined his head to glance at them and said it right to Sayu. If there was any crime committed by his brother or his son, they all needed to be punished. They were incited criminals, so to die at his hands was the natural thing. Why were they all so wronged? The ones who should have felt wronged were the civilians injured and that Jikin. His serene face and those words were a massive provocation to Girth. He growled, asking whether all criminals should be killed. In Girth's mind flashed the picture of Jikin cheerfully carrying him on his back when he was small, and he could not hold himself, raging. He accused Sayu of not understanding anything about the life that Jikin had lived. Simply because he had power in his hands, he believed he could do whatever he wanted to Girth. Jikin had no other option but to turn into a criminal in order to feed and protect him when he was young. He was just living his own way. The more Girth talked, the angrier he became. Mana flowed out everywhere over him in his eyes. Sayu's sin was mocking Jikin's life shamelessly. Right after that, a row of resentful arrows emerged behind him. This was the rank Wolf Fong Celestial Strike skill, able to condense mana and solidify it, then form a row of synchronous attacks which followed the movements of the target. Girth literally desired to kill Sayu to compensate for his brother. Confronted with such an attack, Sayu also definitely understood that he couldn't escape it with mere movement, so he instructed Pri to employ his skill, but he began to complain, mentioning that he was only a mana fragment, so he was almost going to be exhausted. Sayu had to make a sacrifice, instructing him to use it once more and then sleep. He would handle the rest. The moment Sayu spoke, there was a black mixed gold magic circle in the middle of the air. Sayu applied the unknown rank nullification skill, which was able to examine the opponent's mana and then generate a formula to cancel it out. It was effective depending on the mana control and observational skill of the user. His circle of magic immediately repelled all of Girth's arrows, leaving him in a very confused state. Ryu, who was outside, witnessed his top-notch talent that could neutralize an rank hunter's skill completely. He also well understood that revenge at the moment was very hard because they had been caught in an unfavorable situation. They even had to give up. Meanwhile, Sayu jumped up. He questioned him coldly if those who ended up in circumstances like Jock and all decided to become criminals. The one who knew that best was him. So don't attempt to sell in that cheap feeling. That thing was too old-fashioned. After Sayu spoke, he threw a punch at Girth without hesitation. He, despite the fact that he had raised his arm to defend, was kicked several meters backward anyway. The subordinates, observing that, were in panic and shrieking. But out of pride, Girth, despite his arm being hurt so badly it became bruised and black due to the kick, gritted his teeth and warned them not to. He kept shoveling mana into his right arm, blue veins full up everywhere on his entire body due to rage. Girth still was comforting himself in that he held an upper hand in raw muscle strength due to the fact Sayu was a healer and therefore had exhaust all that mana and was unable to keep using those classes at such heights indefinitely. When the time arrived, he merely needed to walk forward and finish him up in a hurry. He would smash him with a focused Wolf Fang heavenly strike. Right after, Girth let out a scream and hurriedly punched at Sayu, but he could easily jump out of the way. In an instant, he immediately clutched at Girth's hair and delivered a knee along with a cautionary not to do that again. Sayu glanced at Girth's obstinate face and kept punching him each time as a warning not to use it because this building was already dilapidated. In case it collapsed, would the damn criminal Girth bear the responsibility? He said while punching him in the face. Girth had had enough and summoned all his power to resist. He screamed and punched towards him. The mata on his arms churned like a ball of blazing red whirlwind. Yet, he leaped up as if nothing occurred. Girth also forsook all face and bellowed. Instructing Ryu to bind him, he dropped down and invoked a magic circle with numerous imprisoning chains. Even though he obeyed, he continued complaining that Girth initially instructed him not to get involved, and then instructed him to attack. It was complete chaos. Those chains immediately tightened around Sayu. Girth threw all his might into a punch loaded with Jockin's hatred with the hope of exploding Sayu's whole body with no time for recovery. But Sayu didn't mind. He called out a golden magic circle in his hand. The handcuff on his hand slowly dissipated. He even casually congratulated Girth on becoming a criminal like his brother. Soon after, Sayu raised his hand and employed the SS rank life drain skill. The golden magic circle rapidly bound Girth in midair. In an instant, his painful groans echoed. All the flesh on his body seemed to evaporate, leaving only a dry, shriveled skeleton covered in skin. Ryu, kneeling on the ground, also trembled non-stop. He couldn't believe that this was the skill of a healer. Upon completing Girth, Sayu landed on the ground calmly. He scoffed at Ryu coldly for even attempting to use the first skill when he awakened as a hunter that, from the start, he wasn't a typical healer. The skill he possessed wasn't using mana to vitality, but controlling vitality as one wished, and it was known as spirit black magic. And he sneered and explained it in full for Ryu to listen to. Once he finished talking, he approached him, and he was so frightened that he crawled back, not even having the courage to fight anymore. Sayu did not make it hard on him and only employed the right hand rule in order to have a light contact so that he would keep quiet. Then he got up and glanced around the bodies lying about on the floor, checking to see if he had swept clean everything by this time. He recalled and patted the camera on his waist. Apparently, he had switched it on this time and did not forget. Sayu took it off and aimed at his face, then called and inquired of Jingu if he could see him. Sayu also clarified that this time he wasn't the aggressor who initiated the fight. Thus this was self-defense. The Jingu group at headquarters were all sweating profusely. Some were spitting water, some were eating noodles up their noses. Jingu, wiping his sweat, helplessly told him that the signal was broadcasting clearly, but to his bad luck, he had pressed the live one instead of recording. And at this moment, there were almost 6,000 people viewing his live. There were some individuals in a meeting room discussing the live broadcast of the process of arresting away criminals by HMCS. This might bring no small amount of trouble to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. One middle-aged black-haired man described that the live broadcast was undertaken around 2 years ago as a promotion film of HMCS International Headquarters for talent recruitment. That was the idea, but in practice it was almost a failed project. During trial time they watched the video of Girth getting sucked dry and couldn't believe that HMCS would manage to create a video with good quality. The glasses-wearing dude rubbed his chin in awe that someone so skilled a person would join HMCS. But that was not the issue to be concerned about at this point. There was a female who interjected, saying yet again that the individual that died in the video was one of their guest hunters from Hong Kong's Crimson Guild. On verification of whether it was really them or an untrue video, HMCS didn't commit anything under the law to the knowledge that exists right now. She was going to order something more but was then cut off as the door suddenly swung open, surprising all three, who jumped up in fright. The one who visited was Dae-soo, the present president of Korea. A few days after that, in the Empire Guild cafeteria, individuals were moving around busy, and the voice of talk was very vibrant. Seo-jin and Si-woo sat facing each other at the table, but it appeared that he wasn't even paying attention to Si-jin. More accurately, he was acting dumb in order not to be asked about the live broadcast last time. Even beforehand said to quit complaining and bother him while having meals. Be silent and appreciate the fried pork. Si-woo dined with a beaming face and complimented that the cafeteria here had tasty food. Seo-jin, seeing him dodging the subject, helplessly smiled and begged Si-woo to listen to him. In addition, Seo-jin also found that Si-woo had been abnormally addicted to food lately. Then Seo-jin came back to discussing Girth's live broadcast. It was now a trending topic. Si-woo ate in silence as he heard Si-jin. Luckily, since the camera was placed on his person, the image was wobbly, and so his face wasn't made out properly. But what concerned Seo-jin was whether or not Dae-soo found out that Si-woo was back. He wouldn't know what to do with himself. He had claimed previously that his mana hadn't healed completely as a result of the spatial teleportation. Looking at what Dae-soo had done in the last 10 years to wipe out all evidence of him, he should keep a low profile now. That was the wise thing to do. Si-woo took a chunk of rolled egg and obligingly corroborated Seo-jin's words. He amazingly placed the rolled egg into his mouth and pledged to take care and keep low so that Seo-jin wouldn't worry. He munched and complained about the attitude of Si-woo being treated like a child when he was nearly 30. Yet to him, Seo-jin was always like a child. Just at that time there was a call. Guild leader for individuals slowly approached their table. Jisoo was just going to inquire why Seo-jin had walked into the cafeteria for lunch, but stopped in her tracks when she saw Si-woo. Looking at them, he also faintly recalled that he had encountered them in the tower, but still couldn't recall who they were. He immediately interrupted, introducing Jisoo as the hunter who had just become a member of their guild as a rookie. She had also woken up with a rank skill, but all thanks to Si-woo. Then Seo-jin looked back to the tall man beside Jisoo and asked if there was a group workshop for the new hunters who joined the guild today. So all the people had gathered for that. He also smiled and agreed. Then he nodded toward the brown-haired man beside him and said Hunter Hammond of the White Lion Guild. The blue-haired man was Yamato from Han Seoul Guild. Then he greeted warmly as Taiji of the Empire Guild. Then he smiled graciously, complimenting Si-woo for his accomplishments in HMCS and also for his willingness to work with him. The mood was smooth sailing when a harsh, sarcastic tone boomed, reminding him if he was the so-called rookie who stirred up the recent ruckus. Hammond said with an unpleasant face that Girth was his rival, but he was murdered by Si-woo. It was unreasonable to him, but that face was not very kind and provocative. Listening to Hammond's conceited words, Taiji and Jisoo both went pale, not knowing what was wrong with him today. Heian also appeared to be upset by the words of Hammond, his face turning black as he earnestly warned him that he was being extremely disrespectful to someone that he had met for the very first time, and also in the headquarters of the Empire Guild. Amin truly was not afraid. He took a sigh, acting indifferent, and regretted that the Empire Guild was formal, and he was not able to ask questions. Amin's impolite demeanor made Taiji go white at the same moment. Shurjin ultimately couldn't put up with it anymore and thundered, inquiring as to why that Hammond would feel ashamed of this demeanor. He didn't have any idea about how guild leader Sangil would act when he learned about this. At this time, Jisoo stiffened and turned back to flee away with Yamato after listening to those words from Shurjin. Hammond became more bold. He rubbed his chest and said he preferred being an orang assault hunter, the Azura of the White Lion, and the personal disciple of Xiaolong, the Blackwater Alliance guildmaster, with such a following that he was not intimidated by a guild name. Siwoo, who was eating, looked up when he overheard Hammond speak of a name he recognized. He hadn't expected him to be Xiaolong's student. Amin was continuing to flaunt in front of Shurjin how Sangil spoiled him. Even though Taiji was still trying to halt him just as things stood at this point, Siwoo, who had been quiet, suddenly chimed in mockingly, declaring that Hammond's master had entirely failed to instruct him on etiquette. He stirred him not to whine in other individuals' headquarters any longer. If he wished to confirm, just come look for him and affirm. Amin was irritated with the person talking about his master like that, but at this moment he was at someone else's guild, so the idea of crushing him needed to be pushed to the back of his mind. Amin vented his fury on the chair beside him. He even gave a threatening expression, warning Siwoo to take care and spare his life. Such haughty behavior left Taiji terribly embarrassed, and he apologized to Shurjin in a rush. Though he released Hammond, Shurjin also turned around to inform Siwoo that he would deal with him personally, and would also make the White Lion Guild pay for the damage to property, at least a few million won. Upon hearing that, Siwoo smiled warmly and magnanimously said that he had already been lenient, because Hammond was his disciple's disciple after all. The scene cut to a luxurious office. The chair in front of the desk was vacant, but a voice called out politely to the individual addressed as guild leader Sunjun. Yunho, the head of the Korean division of HMCS, slowly took a sip of tea and smiled courteously at the individual who personally visited their headquarters amidst his busy schedule, over something that could have been attended to via papers. Sunjun, the guild master of the White Lion Guild, slightly perspired and replied politely that this time it wasn't merely cooperation, but they also had to officially make an apology. He visited here to apologize for Hammond's impolite attitude towards Siwoo previously. Sunjun smiled cunningly, implying that he wanted to meet him in person to apologize, but got an instant rejection from Jinho. He smiled ritually and deflected the matter. After all, there was no physical fight, so there was no need for the White Lion Guild chief to apologize personally. Sunjun still wished to prolong it, but Jinho did not display any courtesy and revealed his real intention, which was not to apologize but to recruit him, making Sunjun flinch and tensed. Jinho didn't mean to make things hard, but Siwoo now was a valuable treasure of HMCS, and he was busy with the work of escorting awakened criminals at the prison at the moment. His plan was that Sunjun couldn't see him even if he wanted to. Sunjun naturally knew what Jinho meant, but he still questioned why it was uncommon for a prison to call for assistance from HMCS. While that was true, it wasn't because it had never occurred. Prior to this, such requests were typically dealt with by the large guilds, but from now on there would likely be a lot of changes. Now that things had reached this point, Sunjun was forced to stand. Though he abandoned the idea of apologizing in person, he still asked to allow Hammond to apologize personally. This was between the two of them after all, so Jianho had no choice but to agree. At last, he smiled insincerely and dismissed his guest. Sunjun smiled, yet in his heart he did not feel well. Regardless of how much HMCS attempted to conceal individuals, it didn't mean that he would let go of such a talent so easily. Then Sunjun walked over to call Secretary Seo beside him and instructed her to call Hammond and inform him to prepare for travel with the most courteous face one could have. Secretary Seo immediately grabbed the tablet, having asked Sunjun first. She informed Hammond that where he was going to meet was in Incheon, at the same time at the Incheon prison. The chubby jailer was wiping his sweaty head with a fan to cool down and wondering why the individual from HMCS hadn't shown up yet. A guard at the door promptly responded that they would be there shortly. The jailer no longer cared and grumbled, complaining about the news of prisoners causing a mess in his hands. He uncomfortably placed the pile of documents and continued to complain that the criminals would not be quiet. They always make trouble right at the time of inspection. On the records was the detail of a silver-haired prisoner by the name of Sherry Folk. When he was arrested, he immediately reported to jail, so he figured there would be no issue. Who would have thought that he would riot out of nowhere like he was insane? Even with the mana-inhibiting shackles, he still seriously hurt 5 individuals. The guard also whispered in a low tone that, in the underworld, Folk was a notoriously dangerous criminal. Even the investigative agencies had to work hard to arrest him. Listening to this made the jailer's wish to send him away as soon as possible grow even more at this moment. The prison block was quiet within the cell. Suddenly a voice rang out calling out Folk's name. That one handcuffed the voice belonged to a rat crawling along the floor who sent a message from Bestia to him. On the other side, they began to talk about the upcoming meeting with Folk. A hooded figure announced that the organization had taken action. If Folk wanted to get out of prison, he had to do a mission. As soon as Folk heard that, he stomped the rat under his foot right after the order to cause a riot in the prison rang out. Meanwhile, Seiwoo had finally arrived. He quietly entered the prison for the people who are awake in Incheon. A long time afterward, Heyman also ran after him to the prison. But regretfully, Seiwoo had already driven the prisoners away. He was really frustrated that Sangil had pulled him away like this while continuing to complain. Heyman looked back and spotted the bus just departing from here. He asked the guard first if it was that bus and quickly got into his car to pursue it. If it continued this way, he would have to drive directly to Gangwon province since he missed it. While pursuing, Heyman growled angrily at Sangil, determined to receive overtime allowance and pay this time. The prison bus drove smoothly along the road without making a sound. Seiwoo, with no strain, sat sipping water and gazing out of the window. Folk suddenly barked and pretended to take umbrage, grumbling that he was offending him by drinking water by himself. Seiwoo did not respond, replying only in a perfunctory tone. That manner instantly irked Folk. He quipped that he must be the new jail guard at the one he was being sent to, but got Seiwoo's icicle-like denial. Folk kept speculating he was one who came from a big guild. He never saw his face before, yet by the way he trailed him despite knowing who he was, he estimated that he was really confident with himself. Although Folk's attitude remained still very disdainful, still, Seiwoo's bad mouth never spared anyone. He played an innocent face and turned around to inquire of Folk who he was. Upon hearing that, he burst out laughing with anger at Seiwoo's madness. He boarded the bus without even knowing who he had to transfer. He should at least know why a prisoner was being transferred. Seiwoo once again goaded him, telling him that it was due to Folk babbling incessantly that he was being shifted. This statement infuriated him further and made him spit out profanities. Then he twitched at the handcuffs on his wrist and uttered the figure 5. This was the same number of criminals that had been put out of commission by Folk when he was wearing these goddamn handcuffs. He believed that, by speaking this way, Seiwoo would understand how he was feeling. The more that Folk talked, the more that he let his actual purpose show through, bringing up the reason why an A+ rank awakened criminal such as himself was being moved by a regular method of travel, and also with an arrogant rookie like him. But Seiwoo did not react. He was simply still sipping his water. At the same instant, a loud explosion was heard in the middle of the prison bus. After clearing the dust, the capsized car on the lawn became a apparent red ghost, and an ignorant boy who did not know when he turned up glanced toward the car and speculated if Folk was dead already. He overheard it and kicked open the door, berating him with rage for attempting to red ghost. Upon hearing that, shook his cane in his hand, joking that he now resembled a chained dog. These words made Folk irate and wished to yank out his dentures. The two were like children bickering back and forth. Then, after some time, he asked if he had taken care of the escort. He stepped outside and said that he had kicked Seiwoo directly in the temple the moment the car blew, so he was likely lying somewhere drinking brain juice coffee now. At this moment, a picture of a hand losing consciousness alongside a cup of coffee also popped up. Folk didn't mind anymore and extended his handcuffs to the boy so he could open them. He was even impatiently encouraging him. Although the handcuffs with monotechnology were highly advanced, if he was not careful, his wrist could go flying off. But after a moment, the boy could take it off. Folk, just having gotten free, massaged his shoulders and grumbled that although he had only spent a few months behind bars, at this moment a voice suddenly spoke out ordering them to cease. The three of them at the same instant turned around to find Heyman stepping out from behind them wherever and whenever they had last known him. He alone walked and posed his questions, inquiring why they took this gloomy path. So they wanted to create a huge scandal. Heyman gazed at the overturned vehicle and pompously declared that Sungil lacked an eye for human beings, because Seiwoo was finally getting the beatings of his life. There was nothing extraordinary about him. Then he clenched his fist and seriously inquired who they were and which organization they belonged to. saying it right here or be arrested and beaten before they were willing to confess. The boy, also looking at Haman, had also recognized his identity and wondered when he had been following them. Red Ghost and Folk, not observing any more hunters, were also eager to exercise a bit. Haman directly took a defensive stance, once more stressing and questioning who they were. Folk crept up slowly, sneering that he didn't care. Since he would be dead anyway after he spoke, he transformed into a bear wolf. This was the ability of body transformation to werewolf and could last until the mana used up. Haman, after seeing Folk's appearance, was very shocked. But he was still confident at this moment that when he defeated him, he would regain the human form. Pondering that, Haman roared and denounced Folk as arrogant garbage. A red magic circle also emerged all over his body. Haman employed the rank offense Azure Raging Diamond skill. By turning the mana inside, the body would be covered with an invisible armor and bolster close combat skills. Then the two attacked each other with powerful charges next. Haman kept punching Folk with the rank speed boost skill, which made him a bit annoyed when he was alone against him. At the same time, Haman punched down furiously, though he also felt the impact force and cumulative damage. Folk still didn't collapse. And once he blocked all a series of punches from Haman, he giggled and derided him with the assurance that he was just giving him the welcoming massage treatment. The rest of them were watching for quite some time now and similarly figured it was useless. They couldn't say when reinforcements might make it through, so Red Ghost directed the kid to do his work and cut him off. The boy immediately concentrated mana in his hand and applied the 10-headed serpent skill to bind Haman. Noticing the threat, he ran away instantly to escape the mana snakes that were pursuing him. The two snakeheads opened their mouths wide and incessantly charged at him without giving him a moment's peace. With the help of his tracking skill, Haman was soon bound by the snakeheads. Just after that, Folk took advantage to hit him on the stomach. He even taunted that the White Lion Guild was not so special. Haman went down on the ground right away, suffering Folk's taunts. He was still taunting that he was a spoiled individual in a large guild and was simply a loser in the dark streets. Amin was still not ready to believe Folk was superior when they were 3-1. Folk was not interested in fairness. He kicked Haman and told him he was simply stupid. Just sit and wait for reinforcements. Red Ghost, on hearing this, piped up, reminding him to get a quick kill off Haman. Folk gazed down at Haman from above and condescendingly inquired whether he had any final words. Yet he did not even listen, and his wolf hand displayed a mana hand enveloped around it. Amin clenched his teeth and did not want to die in this location. Abruptly, there was a magnificent golden blow flashing. The rocks beneath suddenly exploded, splitting the criminals sharply from Haman. The boy had appeared to have been struck and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Someone emerged out of the light, black mana churning about him. He mockingly derided Haman for surrendering before the enemy, even taunting Xiaolong for teaching him so. Haman gazed up, perspiring coldly when he realized he was alive. If Siwu reached out and adjusted the camera on his belt, he had to spend some time learning how to use that thing, and also how to tell which button was for live broadcasting and which for recording. Fry, hearing that, taunted him for being old, so he should pull out a magnifying glass to see. Folk, noticing Siwu, also frowned uneasily. He obviously smashed his skull prior to departing. Red Ghost beside him also verified that he was dead, since even he could not sense the circulation of mana. His expression turned serious when he understood that this was not an ordinary skill. Haman, having been consumed, paled, and cautioned Siwu not to be their rival and suggested he wait for backup. Nevertheless, Siwu did not care to listen. He explained in a calm manner all their offenses, including assaulting escort officers, opening the seal for criminals awakened, smashing prisoner transport vehicles, conspiring to kill a useless hunter, and lastly having the audacity to interrupt his sanctimonious coffee drinking time. In accordance with the jurisdiction of an HMCS hunter, the three of them were deemed criminals caught red-handed. The purple mana glowed so brightly and scattered immediately. His magic circle also seemed perilous beneath his foot. Siwu smiled and made an ultimatum: the whole lot would be taken care of here and now. He addressed Haman, who was also Xiaolong's pupil, to glance carefully. Azura was no ordinary skill, he said while talking on speaking. He also got into fighting stance. Falk on the side couldn't help but swear at him as a madman and was babbling nonsense. Then he hurried to attack him right away, but when he just rushed up, he was kicked aside by Siwu while striking. He appeared to be lecturing that it was a piercing skill, and the skill he just employed was precisely the skill Azura Black Tortoise Black Armor. Haman, noticing that, was very shocked because he knew that was his master Xiaolong's final technique. Falk had not landed yet and was about to take Siwa's next move, because he believed that if he needed to tenderize the meat, he must first drain all the blood. Falk would naturally get another move. He felt like lightning was striking him. And this was the skill Heavenly Thunderslash Demon Kuruga, but from Red Ghost's perspective, it appeared that Falk had evaded Heavenly Thunderslash, and so he couldn't help but disbelieve. Siwu was also a bit surprised when Falk kept on attacking with a curse tool continuously. He also felt that the last couple of years of his life hadn't been spent for nothing, and he also realized that PRI also did not find this surprising much because he had never seen such a skill before. He also secretly wondered if he could consume it or not. Siwu slowly told him that this was like a scroll once used. If he channeled magic power into the inscribed magic of the creator, he could be able to activate it, but it was extremely costly to do so. Upon hearing the words, PRI immediately scolded him for lacking interest anymore. Amin on this side, who hadn't recovered from his shock, screamed, asking Siwu who he was. Why did he know his master's final technique? Suddenly, a force burst from somewhere, and Amin fell to the ground. This force was from Red Ghost. He was chanting something. He also told Siwu not to do anything, otherwise Amin would be squashed under his gravity field. He thought it was extremely funny because while his teammates were getting beaten, Red Ghost was secretly scheming, and now he even planned to threaten him. Red Ghost was slightly cautious and mentioned that this was only an agreement. If he let them go, he would also be safe. He believed that Siwu had been inadvertently pulled into this if he was willing to leave quietly. With that, Siwu cut him off because if he didn't have his own mission, then he would not have taken on this meager mission. He thought that it wouldn't make a difference if Amin was beaten slightly. He was totally furious when he heard this. Now Red Ghost understood that Siwu and Amin were not on the same side. Siwu also graciously informed him that the ones on their side were indeed them and the prison. He was aware that they were assassins who hunted hunters for a profession and also employed by a big organization. Furthermore, they also carried many high-level curse tools, had skills to restrain awakening abilities, and could even contact the prison. What he wanted to know was who they were working for. Red Ghost did not anticipate him to have so much knowledge. The issue was that he dared to come alone even with such knowledge. He actually wanted to know who Siwu was and what he desired when he arrived here. Siwu, having him say it so tediously, affirmatively stated that he wanted to know whom they worked for but still inquired from him again. Noticing that Siwu wasn't easy to bargain with, Red Ghost threatened to take another step. Siwu heard that and reached out slowly towards him. Red Ghost instantly sensed the changed gravity. He didn't believe Siwu had overcharged the gravity with the same lightning-based ability because that wasn't possible with the magic density of an ordinary human. Pri, observing that, was very interested. Meanwhile, Siwu had recovered 40, and that made him feel that the right warm-up worked wonders. Siwu addressed Red Ghost, telling him not to spend any more time since with his age, wasn't every second precious? Red Ghost was still refusing stubbornly because he believed that even if they were members of any organization, he would not tell him easily because if anyone was a member of an organization, they would take a vow of silence. This vow was sealed by the mana of that person, and whoever betrayed the secrets of the organization would be killed instantly. Meanwhile, Haman was also slowly standing up behind Siwu. Yangdu was also slowly shivering while he was sitting up. Red Ghost even reprimanded him for being a blockhead. Siwu, who heard it from the start to the end, believed that it was because Red Ghost was afraid to die, for whenever he made a new magic circle he would say not to worry, he would get used to it after dying a few more times. Red Ghost, noticing that, pressed Folk to do something in a hurry. Folk, who was bleeding all the time, didn't dare to wait any longer. He ran at him, swearing to rend Siwu to pieces even if he was killed, but how could he let it happen? Siwu spoke little and struck Yangdu on the chin. Amin, wiping his blood, cried out that the account was now squared. Yangdu, upon hearing him say that, bellowed because he felt Haman ought to have remained there rather than get in their way. Amin laughed mockingly, believing that he was speaking rubbish since the actual fun had just started. Siwu on this side simply coldly bellowed a word. Wind cut. The subsequent tornadoes seemed, entwining people in Red Ghost, and this was the technique, Heavenly Wind 10,000 cycles. Siwu pinched Red Ghost's neck, inquiring how he was feeling. He was now informing him that death was such. Red Ghost was not able to say anything. Only struggling hard, he employed a cold expression, inquiring from him how many times he had to attempt like this in order to respond to his question. Red Ghost tumbled into unconsciousness. Taking his last breath to inquire from Siwoo what sort of person he was, he did not reply to his question and just squeezed tighter, since it looked like this one time was not enough for him. Amin was convinced that Siwoo was actually a madman. He was witnessing Siwoo dealing with other people before they plunged to their deaths. If he were in such a condition, he would prefer to die. Amin was highly curious about what that unusual skill was. Siwoo had made Red Ghost taste it for the third time. He asked impatiently again and again who they were working for. Pope could no longer tolerate it and begged him to stop. He also begged Red Ghost to tell him at once. He finally could not bear it and said that they were working for Bestia. Siwoo, hearing this, was very satisfied. Red Ghost watched him as though he had thought about something, because initially, Red Ghost was in a state of being half a skeptic. Yet on seeing his ability, Red Ghost was confident that he knew that he was among the 3 legends who went missing ages ago, the Mad Dog, Min Siwoo. He sat down at this point and requested a genuine dialogue with them. Siwoo took on the form of an individual's face and inquired if they were aware of his whereabouts. The secret individuals joined a small unit known as the Bestia Assassination Organization. They were an elite group of assassins who were experts at assassination. Under Crow's command, the expensive table and chairs in the secret room were where they operated from. They were notorious worldwide as an army of great skill, and as well as being the greatest number of missions they had executed. Red Ghost had lived for a long time in his life in the shadows as a first-generation hunter. That is why he always had a good idea about this organization. There was no need to hesitate when he got an invitation from such a big organization. Red Ghost immediately signed his name on the settlement paper to him. Murderers who were part of an organization, maintaining secrets regarding their fellow members was the minimum law. The instant you took the oath to stay silent, your life and death would be determined by the organization. He himself was bound by the organization both physically and mentally. Thus, to him, being loyal until his head fell to the ground was the rule of this world. Red Ghost was very loyal. It had been 15 years since he became a member of the organization. Even when he was almost dying, he never considered betraying his brothers. He would bite off his tongue and die first. However, that was on the day Min Siwoo came. He had tasted real death countless times, which loosened his mouth slowly. He started to share information regarding one of Besh's members. The member used the code name Blackmamba. The above things were what Min Siwoo could get from the individual standing before him. He spoke nonchalantly, considering the name Blackmamba. Oh well, so you people are from that organization? Sherry folk on the ground curiously shook with anger as Siwoo posed a question to both of them. Siwoo gazed at the beaten man crawling on the ground. He spoke, his tone icy and merciless, and asked them if they had ever been assigned a mission to kill the hunter young Min Jin. Abruptly, his voice turned angry when folk remained quiet, so he felt afraid of the killing atmosphere himself, who was kowtowing on the ground. Red Ghost and Sherry folk were both bowing their heads to the ground. The 2 people's bodies were shaking all the time. They did not dare to lift their eyes to look at Min Siwoo. On this occasion, Sherry folk would always feel this pain as though his skin is being peeled. Red Ghost, in order to plead for how to live on, didn't hold back on exposing all weaknesses of the organization and the motive behind this encounter. Min Siwoo blared at them expressionlessly. He was tasked with releasing Sherry folk and needed to be at the organization's weekly meeting next week. Sherry folk clenched his teeth as he observed the individual before him repeatedly betraying the organization at the same time. Red Ghost kowtowed with the desire to be Siwoo's minion. Chu Hae-min, who was behind Siwoo, lost his temper when he overheard the insects before him babbling nonsense. He gazed at Siwoo, who was absent-minded and kept questioning. Chu Hae-min continued to convince Siwoo with his words. He felt extremely helpless when he heard him chattering. He became contemplative as he thought about the things he required. Siwoo glanced at the 2 individuals before him suspiciously, fearing that they would disclose his information. Lastly, he made a stunning decision, which was to take all the individuals before him as disciples. This was a huge shock to Chu Hae-min. Red Ghost was extremely thankful for Siwoo's decision. He always provided the advantages that he could obtain. Nevertheless, In order to prevent betrayal, Si Wu still requested them to take an oath. This caused the two individuals kneeling on the ground to turn pale. They were scared that they would be killed if they did not follow the oath. With no time to think, Si Wu made a magic circle right before them. Red Ghost and Sherry Folk knelt down on the ground. Mouths sworn all the time. Chu Hei Min was just able to stand there. As he watched what was taking place in front of him, a deal had been made. From then on, Red Ghost and Sherry Folk's lives rested on their obedience. They were only able to kowtow and obey. Witnessing the two thugs before him being acknowledged as disciples made Chu Hei Min feel neglected. He continuously cried and made a even threatening Si Wu that if he did not take him in, he would go to the association. But with one glance from Si Wu, he ceased talking. Chu Hei Min was as if flowers blossomed before his very eyes upon hearing Si Wu say that he was taking him in as a disciple. His eyes lit up and were bubbling with excitement. He did not think what he had just heard. Si Wu turned around and walked away, disregarding Chu Hei Min, who was acting boastful before the two insects. In another scene, in the prison, in the quiet room, a sharp scream suddenly echoed. The jailer always scolded the servants. Huang Jianggu always cursed Si Wu in his mind. It seemed that all things connected with him were unbelievable. The jailer always scolded Huang Jianggu with extremely severe words. But his reason made the jailer hesitate for a moment. According to Huang Jianggu, the error appeared to be that of the jailer when he was subjective in his work. The jailer slammed the table in anger. He was like someone had trodden on his tail, yelling all the time at Huang Jianggu. Huang Jianggu's following words made the jailer's face darken even further. He concurred with what the jailer had told him, but he also needed to warn him of a new threat that was coming. Huang Jianggu wished that he could be on his side. On Min Si Wu's side, he was bored when he heard his subordinates telling him about the situation. Chu Hei Min felt strange when he had to listen to this rubbish. Red Ghost sat quietly in a corner, savoring the cup of tea in his hand. Huang Jianggu suddenly became mad, pointing at the two strangers, interrogating them, compelling Min Si Wu to close his mouth. Hastily, Si Wu folded his legs. He announced slowly that the mission meeting would start during the meeting. The mission would be executed when the Biastia Assassination Organization's meeting was held. Jianggu was greatly shocked when he learned of his new assignment. He asked again and again. The smile on Si Wu's face turned weirdly sinister. He replied nonchalantly. His intention was precisely to demolish this organization. The candlelight danced in the dark room. A voice was heard. It's unusual for everyone to be present today. They sat at a circular table, all keeping quiet after hearing that a female instantly snapped and rebuked the male beside her for being dumb. As Red Ghost and Folk were not there, so two individuals were missing. She also told him that the kid was dead. The male who was being rebuked had no time to respond, forgetting himself before responding that he wasn't including those traitorous males, reminding her that she was dumb. Sitting across from them, the one-eyed man also shared his admiration because he felt that they didn't seem like the kind of people who had enough guts to betray the organization. It was really a big surprise to him. The man sitting beside him said that he thought they should be dealt with on the spot. In contrast to the carefree demeanor of the two, Porcupine, seated with her legs folded up on the chair, holding her hair in her hands, having a fit of rage, cursing Folk as a bastard, recollected that even they had planned to go to 20 Land together. The more she dwelled upon it, the madder she grew. Porcupine promised to murder him. Breaking the conversation, the guy with the large scar beside his mouth yelled. Enough. He believed that the choice of dealing with the traitors was that of their leader, who was sitting peacefully on the other side. The leader, Crow, had her face covered with a headscarf. Yet, her careless voice said everything. She inquired blankly, "What's wrong?" Crow found this interesting, instructing all of them to keep arguing. Then she too piped up, declaring that even she was very surprised to hear that up to 3 individuals were missing from a meeting as important as this. Crow asked once again if anyone else had something to say. This left everyone stumped. Raking their brains, Crow suddenly came up with an idea. She smiled evilly, indicating that they declare a plan for their group to stage a deathmatch to determine who would handle the traitors. On hearing this view of their leader, everybody was utterly silent. The mood became strained. Somebody intervened to relax the mood. He admonished Crow for teasing too badly, therefore it would be advisable to stop. The individual who addressed them was Blackmamba. He believed that it would be possible to deal with the traitors anytime, but the problem was that the traitors knew where and when the place. The individual seated across from him considered this issue to be a mosquito. He viewed them as nothing great, as nobodies who could not do anything. He ridiculed Blackmamba by hyping his thought, indicating that the traitors would run right into the middle of the meeting right after his words. The people had no time to recover because, seconds after the words, the alarm bell sounded loudly, alerting them of non-identified movement at entrances 1 to 5. Crow placed her head on her hand while releasing mocking laughs, indicating that he was fast-faced and spoke too soon. The first to stand up had proposed that they divide, each of them handling one of the 5 entrances, getting rid of the intruders. The others started complaining about it being inconvenient. The girl from earlier did not even take notice and only cared about the fact that she was dressed in new clothes today. They stood up, pushing their chairs back and started deploying. As the others departed, only 3 were remaining seated. Blackmamba drank his tea quietly, instructing them to sort it out in a hurry and return. Crow also joked and laughed, stating, "See you later." Porcupine continued playing the game. He turned around and asked, "What about a side?" They asked whether Porcupine and Blackmamba weren't going either. They feigned not hearing when they were queried. Blackmamba didn't want the little fish. Porcupine agreed too, and they had sufficient people. She would go play a game once the rest had left for a bit. Crow recalled that she should have instructed those guys to return with heads to confirm their identities, but letting them do as they wanted would be too brutal. Blackmamba diverted the conversation, complimenting that she was very commendable just for the reason that she was able to chain such ferocious beasts. Nonetheless, they didn't realize that someone overheard them in the attic. Glancing down from the ceiling, Huang Zhongwa sighed at his luck, who had never once won a 50,001 lottery ticket in his life. Yet now he had chanced to find such a bonanza 30 minutes earlier. A crowd of people stood outside the building. Zhongwa introduced this as Bestya's meeting hall. Su Haiman cried out that they had indeed discovered a perfect ant nest. Red Ghost described the structure inside. There were 5 entrances in total. Every entrance was equipped with an intruder sensor. Since the map within kept changing, they were unable to pinpoint where every entrance would take them, but these 5 exits were the only exits available, and every one of them took them back to the main hall, where their target was gathering. Regardless of what exit you took, we would end up at the hall. It just took slightly more or less time. Min Saiwu, upon hearing that, considered he believed people should take a path. Otherwise, if all of them followed the same path, the target would surely get away through some other path. He turned and asked Zhongwa if he had a walkie-talkie. He said yes and turned to retrieve things from his bag. Saiwu re-emphasized the situation. Everyone would enter one of the corridors. Since they had sensors, they had surely been picked up and were prepared. In case they faced an opponent too powerful to handle, he told them to use the walkie-talkie to report immediately and delay them for as long as possible. Saiwu also reminded them clearly that whenever they saw the target name Blackmamba pop up, they had to alert everyone right away. After explaining this, he faced around and disappeared, and everybody was aware of the mission, so they began departing. Zhongwa, entering first, snuck behind a column to search for the place. He looked over and noted everything was good. Zhongwa remembered that not much later after he entered the designated route, the route was clogged. He then discovered a route through the closest air vent somehow. Zhongwa was the very first person to arrive at the main hall without having any battle. He questioned whether they did not activate the sensors on the attic ceiling. Zhongwa estimated that everybody here was at least a rank or higher. Security did not look strong, but compared to the positioning of the paths, leading straight into the center like this, the Bestia Guild guys did not even need to fight. They simply had to wait for the intruders to enter and take them out on the spot. He stretched for the walkie-talkie but paused when he noticed that there appeared to be a number of guards checking the entrances. So 5 battles were happening concurrently. Thus, even if he requested for reinforcements then, his teammates would not be able to regroup. Taking 2 marbles from the pouch around his thigh, Zhongwa grumbled to himself that he should maybe minimize the number of enemies himself at first. A steel marble went rolling on the ground. Porcupine inquisitively walked over to see. She came to find that it was a marble. Believing it must have dropped from her pocket, so she didn't understand why it was still in her pocket. Realizing that it was something to bet, Crow asked directly if she was still playing slots. Porcupine sweetly apologized to Crow, But she had won the lottery the day before yesterday. So quitting did not seem easy when she was going to touch the marble. It exploded in an instant. Porcupine lost instantly. Crow hesitated, declaring Porcupine dead. Blackmamba jumped up in a hurry. He found that an agile mouse had crept in. A mine showed itself. It was hurled directly towards Mamba, yet he deflected it, even complimenting that this ambush was very fine. But he threw the mine directly onto the ceiling, loudly proclaiming that he did not like hide and seek. Once the location where Shungu was blown up, he kicked the shield and sped down. He kicked Mamba to say hello. He recognized him at once. Since he only beat one, he clenched his teeth and swore, "Damn it." Gazing at the two other individuals, Shungu believed that despite using expert anti-terrorism magic grenades, they were still intact, particularly the one who appeared to be the leader. He was not applying any special techniques. Blackmamba once more stated, assuming that he did not come alone, yet it did not seem to faze him, even asking if the traitors had fled to HMCS and exposed all. Shungu snarled, affirming, also questioning that, if so, what could he do to him? Mamba squinted. He was impressed with the people who dared to leave the organization just to choose something even more useless than that. Hearing this, Shungu became enraged, cursing him as a bastard, while simultaneously launching a surprise attack towards him. Not only that, a series of knives appeared behind Mamba and were flying towards him. Crow, who was sitting to the side, too, felt that it wasn't a bad move. Mamba at this point recalled what his ability was. He reaffirmed again that it was mind control, right? On this side, Shungu knelt down on one knee, pulling out a mine, assessing that Mamba's skin was too tough. His regeneration power was also too quick. It was just augmenting his body with mana. But his speed and stamina had gotten insane like that, putting an end to this monotony. He charged towards Shungu. Mamba's attack sent him flying back, slamming into the wall. He drew out a wand, explaining that he didn't initially want to leave fingerprints on his organs, but since Shungu had begun bleeding, he had no other option prior to proceeding. Mamba respectfully inquired whether Crow would like to kill him. Crow simply savored her tea and explained that she would consider it. Shungu, observing the perilous predicament, rapidly drew out the walkie-talkie and appealed for help. He declared that he was fighting the target in the main hall before he could say anything else. Blackmamba stamped on his chest. He sneered that he appeared to be a little slow. Who was going to come and rescue him now? He muttered each possibility: the HMCS branch director, the turncoat red ghost, or the wolf cub. He muttered a final possibility, and indeed, the three of them were eagerly from behind Blackmamba. Precisely at the moment that Blackmamba had anticipated, all of them had rushed forward. A deafening explosion followed, and the ground caved in into a gigantic pit. But fortunately, Blackmamba was able to sidestep, but this did leave him slightly taken aback. He hadn't expected these people to get past Beastie as assassins so easily. Blackmamba walked over to Crow, jokingly inquiring whether she was very disappointed. Crow sighed, a bit displeased since she had picked some good guys, but she didn't expect them to be this poor. Blackmamba still had the feeling that there was something off because according to the wounds there had been a fight, but seeing the individuals standing before him, he didn't believe they could easily overcome Tigra or Grizzly. Blackmamba jumped back to the attack. Nearby rubble flew off in all directions as well. Within the second group, he also got back attacked by someone and cursed as a murderer, cursed with bad luck. Even Amun blamed him for his constant prattling on. Just after having reached out near Blackmamba, he inquired whether was that Hunter Heyman. Huh? He had an attacking tone since he felt like he ought to be part of HMCS and not here. When he was distracted, Heyman had been pushed airborne by Blackmamba and had hit another guy, so he was really apologetic about it. Blackmamba looked at Sherry Folk and read short next. Everything here was unfair to him, as he saw the folks in front of him weren't performing like a team, but a messy mix thrown together. He recognized that these individuals were from other organizations, and there was no need for them to be here. Blackmamba was quite interested in knowing who was the individual that had brought these individuals together. But at this time, somewhere else, there was an individual who was having his hair pulled back tightly. He had been beaten so much that he could no longer resist getting back to the battle. Heyman was enraged at listening to the words of Blackmamba. He evidently knew he was being demeaned by Heyman from the White Lion. He hollered really loud and told everyone not to sleep. Giando spotted Heyman and was highly shocked because he was that fast to get here. Allman revealed the moment he listened to the radio. He rushed straight to here, but, in fact, it was not quite like that. Allman indicated that more precisely. He was fighting with someone close to the entrance, but his master had suddenly showed up and told him to proceed directly to the center. Allman assumed that Folk and Red Short were in the same situation, but before them was holding down Blackmamba until his master came. Sherry Folk listened to that and cursed violently, because how do they restrain an apeless rank awakened without killing him? To say nothing, that it was Blackmamba. Red Short also did not think the situation was looking quite good, because Blackmamba had yet to use his skills. He had the feeling that something was terribly wrong in this meeting room based on what Red Short knew about Blackmamba. In speed and attacking power, he was nearly the second strongest individual in Bestia, but he lacked high-level sensing or tracking abilities. And this further confirmed that Blackmamba had planned something, or perhaps it was Crow, the Bestia leader. Red Short thought that Blackmamba's ability was still a secret to him. Since he had no idea what kind of trump card he would use, they couldn't go on like this indefinitely. Red Short knocked his cane violently onto the floor, then informed the others that he would handle the boss. The other fellows, however, were to regulate Blackmamba. Sherryfolk overheard that and was enraged, cursing him for always dumping the dirty job on him. Blackmamba on this side was battling Hammond, but he still had the stamina to worry about how no one was responding to his question. Red Short, on this side, quietly thought that until their master came, they would not be able to exit this place. Considering to that extent, he formed a sealing formation. Due to that, Hammond could strike Blackmamba with an attack. Crow was also dominated by the chains of the sealing formation. She thought it was very absurd because she believed that these people were making her fight. Red Short cautioned Crow to not move, for he believed even she could not get away so easily from the mythical rank sealing formation. The words struck Crow as being ridiculously silly. Crow even mocked at how it seemed Red Short's new master treated him with kindness, even outfitting him with top-grade gear, but for him to turn around and betray the organization like this, wasn't that too ruthless? At this moment, Porcupine behind Red Short slowly sat up from behind her. Of course, Crow was aware of that before Red Short noticed Porcupine. She had already approached right beside him. Sherryfolk came rushing up, yelling him out. Gianda was also shocked to an extreme degree, since he was sure she had passed away. Blackmamba, on our side, had escaped from the chains, and it appeared he was eager to finish everything in a hurry. Since he had no idea when reinforcements would be coming, but he was still here mopping up these trash, this made Blackmamba feel extremely busy, so he concluded that these people must die sooner rather than later. He chose to employ his long blood ability in order to put an end to them on this side too. Despite having been hurt, he still volunteered to help from the distance. Hearing that, he instructed Gianda not to budge, since his ribs had been broken. Allman quietly thought to himself that despite Blackmamba's strength, he could not break through this layer of scales immediately, therefore. But just as he was going to think that, an attack came flying at the two of them. Fortunately, they were able to avoid it. Allman was not surprised by this, since from the very first contact, he had understood that Blackmamba's mutations felt like Folk's, but mana density was so much greater, and in this meeting hall, Blackmamba appeared to be dominating the ground as if it were a part of his body. Allman also realized that in this context, he could do nothing but buy time, and could not do anything else. He glanced at the others who were also facing difficulties while running. So using reinforcements was out of the question. When Heyman was feeling powerless, Blackmamba attacked him. At just the right moment, a knife came flying in and pierced his hand. The moment his arm changed, his arm transformed at once. Django saw Blackmamba's arm being destroyed and came to the understanding that he was able to perform elemental magic too. Blackmamba let out a deafening roar at this point. Rubble around him also stood up with it. Allman verbally reminded Django loudly that there were flying rocks coming at him from upstairs. No sooner had he uttered the words when Blackmamba attacked Heyman once more, for he knew he still had time to care about others. Allman was soon sent flying. The next was Django. In making his attack, Blackmamba taunted the righteous hunters as well, always committing the same error. He believed that these individuals believed that the level of skill and the quantity of mana would determine who would win the fight, but there was something that they had come here but believed he wouldn't have prepared anything. Blackmamba uttered as he tightened his hand around Giano's neck, until his face began to transform. Bulk, meanwhile, was not faring any better. Since Porcupine had wanted to kill him, the whole meeting hall had been reduced to shreds in an instant, and a self-destruct formation had been created here, both boosting defense and being constructed for emergencies. Better said, it was a snake den the moment these individuals stepped in. Their destiny had been sealed. Blackmamba instructed everyone to not fight anymore and to exit calmly. On his face at this time was a mere murderous aura. Suddenly, there was another loud explosion. A figure moved like lightning. He attacked Blackmamba straight away, and he could not resist. He had finally caught up with him. Sewa gazed at Blackmamba and provided a wicked smile. Siwoo pushed Blackmamba to the wall and held him by a hair from struggling. He seemed like a killer venomous snake in his eyes. Porcupine, on seeing her companion cornered, cried out to Siwoo, inquiring who he was now. Suddenly she, too, got struck by lightning alongside Blackmamba. Crow noticed this happening, couldn't help but feel flabbergasted, for she was absolutely certain that Siwoo must have cancelled out all the spells around here. When he heard that, pre-roared non-stop and said that it was because he had assisted, and Siwoo wasn't that great. Crow became all the more intrigued, because Siwoo had destroyed a facility that took millions to construct into a useless mound of debris in a flash. Blackmamba, still somewhat strong, expressed his astonishment at his first appearance, but now he had come to realize something. He guessed that he was the suspect who had taken out Besh's assassins and brought the people here. When he heard the word suspect, Siwoo scolded that Blackmamba was the one who was that. Crow, who stood far away, showed her view that Siwoo came here due to Blackmamba. She also inquired what he had done. Blackmamba denied right away because he only took missions. Blackmamba began pondering Siwoo's words, thinking that this could be a revenge case, but the point is, he never left behind any traces upon killing his target, yet somehow he managed to track him down. Siwoo, by the way, was contemplating before avenging that he needed to know something. After talking, he directed sparks at Blackmamba. Crow was going to say something, but she was cut off by red ghosts. Kane, he and Sherry Fo could crow tightly, so she couldn't say anything else, because Siwoo wished to hear something. Tightly held by the two, her attitude relaxed. She said that she didn't mean to make Red Ghost nervous and asked him why he was so loyal to him. She actually wanted to know who he was. On Blackmamba's side, he was being attacked by Siwoo with fire all the time. He was trying his best to withstand because he did not anticipate the buffs that he had chanted beforehand becoming a trap that worked against himself. Blackmamba thought silently that Siwoo must have noticed who he was. So could he be a scout? But with this attack speed, he couldn't be said to be a regular melee hunter. Blackmamba was knocked off his feet again, crashing into the nearby wall, his mouth full of blood. He muttered that he hadn't met anyone like Siwoo in his life. He used to think that he was familiar with all the top-level hunters, but who he was incomprehensible to him. Blackmamba cursed him wrathfully and demanded to know what he wanted. Blackmamba prepared to launch a counterattack, but using only one leg, Siwoo kicked him back down on the ground. He spoke to him coldly. Maybe you've gotten something wrong. He claimed to be the one allowed to ask questions. And didn't he remember him? He was handling him carefully at the time since Siwoo was capable of killing Blackmamba at that moment. He told him to simply remain stationary until he let him walk. When he saw that he was going to kill him, Blackmamba begged him with all his heart not to do it. Siwoo clenched Blackmamba's mouth, gradually questioning him about who was above VIP. Who was the person that had hired him to assassinate young Minjin? Specifically, the archaeologist young Minjin. Blackmamba, upon hearing that, smirked, for he finally knew that he was someone connected to young Minjin. Siwoo didn't have much patience anymore. He asked Blackmamba to respond immediately. Suddenly, he took his hand, saying he would let him know. But even if he said that, when he came this far, Blackmamba suddenly opened his mouth. On his tongue there was some sort of formation, but it appeared that Siwoo didn't notice this. Blackmamba was more than happy to inform him, but he didn't think he could hear it, because his ears would be melted off soon enough. As he was finishing speaking, Blackmamba spat poison out of his mouth towards him. Blackmamba sported a taunting smile, informing him that since he was an assassin, he could not disclose client details. Siwoo, having his face spread with poison, was infuriated because he believed Blackmamba had spat on him. If he was not going to speak seriously, he would get him to speak. Blackmamba, realizing that he was not affected at all, came to the horrific realization that he was a healer. He was going to call Crow for assistance, but her condition did not look good either, as she too was being surrounded by the others. Blackmamba respectfully agreed to say all of it. The client was Pandemo as Siwoo involuntarily uttered the name. Pandemonium. Crow smiled, as if she had understood something. She pushed away the people around her. Crow also knew who he was now. She said that he was the first-generation hunter who disappeared 10 years ago, the Mad Dog. Siwoo he wasn't surprised that his identity had been revealed. He asked in return, did Crow also belong to Pandemonium? She, of course, didn't because her group was all assassins and they didn't accept personal requests. Assassins were just tools. Crow was aware of who Siwoo was because she knew his power and that he was aware of Pandemonium. Somebody told her previously that there was a first-generation hunter who employed a peculiar recovery ability. Siwoo didn't think that Crow didn't have any knowledge. If she doesn't speak up, he'll learn on his own. Crow replied she wasn't a liar. She spoke because he had discovered her, so his question was already solved. But the weird thing in this situation was that they had forgotten Siwoo existed. But that wasn't Crow's concern. She turned around and called Porcupine to wake up after talking. Then came a surprising explosion. Crow and Porcupine departed with it. She even thought that he would pursue the two of them. But Siwoo told her he wouldn't do so, since he knew what to do next. Crow, upon hearing that, smiled. She also told them they would see each other again soon. Amin couldn't help but wonder why Siwoo let those two go. Siwoo said slowly that if they pursued the two, they would trigger the destruction magic already chanted on the floor. He well realized that the locals here no longer possessed enough power to prevent this. He indicated that they now had what they desired and instructed Jengu to clear the site at the moment. He recalled Pandemonium. Minjin Siwoo sincerely desired to understand what he found out. Siwoo sat reflectively before a computer screen. Repeating the name Pandemonium, he clicked the mouse, starting to weave together all the things that had transpired since 20 years ago when the first gate opened, setting everything in motion. In this world, mana was seen as the origin of everything, the source of power, and then there was another force known as the demon race, a race from a different dimension that possessed higher power. Once the first gate opened, they made use of the commotion and invaded Earth, thinking of themselves as high-ranking administrators who could dominate others. This was really a hell on Earth for human beings, as they could tyrannize others at will and treat humans as inferior beings. They constructed a demon king's palace, which commanded all the gates on Earth, deeming it their own world. In that bleak circumstance, several individuals who could not tolerate it any further yielded to the demon king. They called themselves Pandemonium. Fortunately, the initial generation of hunters who understood the strength of mana rose up and took on the brutality of the demon race. War ensued instantly between human beings and the demon race. The turmoil finally ceased with human victory. It had been 10 years since Siwoo defeated the demon king and was thrown into the spatial rift. Pandemonium was also wiped out, but now it had reappeared. He suddenly asked Fry if the Pandemonium group also existed in the other world he had been to. But with a different appearance, Fry nonchalantly said that was correct. Among the numerous races he had encountered, there were the largest number of the demon race was a cruel race. They not only wanted to conquer humans, but also make other lower races labor for them as servants, even dragons. Siwoo was greatly perplexed as to why they were so ruthless everywhere, but Fry did not quite agree. He felt something had been taken by the demon race before he met Siwoo and lost his memories. After 100 years of fighting with the demon race, Fry decided they were surely the kind of filth capable of doing horrible things. Although head hurt it all, Siwoo still got a headache. Information he gathered was too scant. 10 years earlier, he was only concerned with killing them without actually knowing much about them. So when the time came, he didn't know what was happening much. All he knew now was that their mana patterns were not human. They were also far better at disguises than they had been 10 years ago. Fairy believed that simply killing them all would be sufficient, but he didn't believe things could be that easy. At this very moment, the door of the room opened. Shijan entered, inquiring with a curious expression if Siwoo was causing trouble once again, and why he suddenly wanted to lease an office. He explained that it was simply because he wanted to trace Min Jin's path. Shijan was very enraged at his nonchalance, explaining that it was a trifling matter, but he had annihilated a whole assassin guild. He interrogated Siwoo, inquiring if the office was to gather the people involved and who he had pulled into this that he needed to conceal. Shijan started complaining that Siwoo always had secrets, fearing that Su would discover them. Siwoo also worried a lot about the chatty Jingu. He sighed, telling Shizhan not to worry so much because Jengu had wiped out all the clues that had anything to do with him. He also planned to visit Disu upon hearing this. Shizhan became even more uneasy as Wu reassured him that he could shut down any unnecessary moves. In fact, Wu's mana still hadn't recovered. He told Wu better not be impulsive, he didn't want to see Wu in harm's way again. Siwu had to pretend to be normal and tease Shizhan, telling him he knew what to do. Shizhan wished that he would honor his word and asked that he coach the rookies as an alternative to leasing him the office. He also spoke of Hunter Shinjiso, who possessed a multi-faced and hard-to-master awakening skill and required reassessment. Siwu reluctantly agreed, then shifted the topic, stating that he was famished. Friday also snarled, stating that he was very hungry. Siwu cradled his belly, believing Friday was the cause of why he was perpetually starving. After exiting the office, he had a storm of calls from Jengu, inquiring if he wanted to withdraw his name from this case. Upon hearing that question, he became even more infuriated, since it was Jengu who ought to be guilty of tattling to Shizhan. Jengu, however, believed he was justified. Siwu did not know how bad the issue was. This was making the agencies and the media go into frenzy. An assassination group of hunters was something unprecedented. HMCS had beaten them with a single individual. Everybody was uneasy about his careless attitude. Hoping that he would assist, Jengu blamed Wu for getting the director into trouble. He did not know how to convey that he had managed to wipe out all of the assassins. Wu believed that it would be good enough to simply unify his statements with the White Lion Guild, but Jengu was experiencing some trouble doing so. He told Wu to do it himself. Taking into account the recent prison breakout, Wu refused outright on the mere grounds that he was hungry, and then hung up straight away. He went back to the couch and sat down because he was too exhausted by these people. He just did not want to do anything. He turned to Shizhan, who was cooking, and asked him what the current state of affairs in the demon race was, and whether anything had changed from 10 years ago. Shizhan believed that there were not too many things that were alike. The demon race had formed a peace accord. After the treaty had been signed, they set up a research institution in the Arctic about mana spilling over onto Earth. Apart from that, there were no other suspicious behaviors. Most nations even collaborated with them. The demon race didn't show themselves as much anymore. Up till now, kids even believed the demon race to be mere legends. Wu frowned. Fry added that the demon race could not love peace. That was absurd. While he didn't think so either, he had to admit that demons did have varying ideologies. He couldn't lump them all as being evil. He pondered Crow's unusual mana patterns. Maybe she was a half-breed between a demon and a human. This could be entirely likely. He grasped the group photo of his friends in his hand, lost in thought, all of this only to avenge Min Jin. But when he actually dug in deep and pursued the lead, he was sure that it was not as simple as it was on the surface. This war would be so much longer than he anticipated. At this time, Wu was busy instructing his apprentices, saying everyone should pay attention to manipulating the mana within their bodies, and perceiving the Dantian. Amin was absent-minded, not having any idea about what he did mean by Dantian. He believed awakening skills only to occur when his body exploded in adrenaline, and this type of meditation did no good at all. Siwu knocked annoyedly on Folk's head. We can't pay any respects to his training, sighing. He said it was as indispensable to control mana as to use a gun. Folk, however, believed that simply overpowering others with a fierce attack was sufficient. Wu replied that Folk was still inexperienced if he believed that would be sufficient to trigger his first skill in a synthetic gate. The disparity in power also rested on numerous variables. If they didn't know how to properly handle mana, they wouldn't feel the Dantian when they inadvertently triggered a skill. But if they could feel it, a gap would form in the body, or mana came together and flowed. That reservoir of power was known as the Dantian. They expressed themselves externally as abilities. If you can master them, the power of the ability will be more. He showed Heyman how to increase the Dantian so that more mana could be stored, and it could also assist in opening other Dantians, particularly because humans had only possessed mana for around 20 years. They had to learn about its nature better. The most effective way to do that was through meditation and mana control training. Siwu reminded them again that they had to focus completely. Pri in his body viewed the scenario with distaste, stating that he was a small kid just faking everything. Siwu carelessly asserted that this, of course, must be true. particularly to Heyman and people. He would not be polite, so they had to do their best. Guanggu, with his weary face, came in from beyond the doorway, scolding Si Wu for forcing him to look everywhere. If Si Wu raised his chin, he remarked that Guanggu was a stalker, getting on his nerves. Yanggu helplessly pleaded with him to accompany him to headquarters immediately to meet the branch director. At headquarters, individuals were walking to and fro with much ado. Si Wu started inquiring how it was that the branch director was wanting to meet him. He suspected if Guanggu had betrayed him. He desperately denied it, insisting that that was impossible. Maybe this had to do with the recent occurrence at Incheon prison. Standing in their way were two individuals who emerged suddenly, hindering their move and taunting Guanggu. One of them was senior agent Ha Jun Ti, and the other one was team leader Song Chong-won. Both of these belonged to the Gangnam HMCS unit. They inquired if Guanggu had just contributed wonderfully. Gang Bok's team had come into focus. Had he performed some sort of magic trick? Guanggu frowned indignantly on hearing the name Song Chong-won, who came back from his assignment. He complained, telling them that they should be working and not here blocking his way, but they just smile ironically, telling him that it was normal greeting. He gestured towards Si Wu, who was standing there, asking him if he was the new recruit who had created a scene at the Incheon prison. Team Captain Guanggu really does have an eagle eye to like to scoop up people like that to be on his team. Guanggu, even though extremely furious, only wanted to finish this soon, so he said maybe he was still fatigued due to the time difference, and it would be better to go rest. The one beside him didn't let it go, insisting that they weren't tired due to the time zone difference. Chong-won also flapped his hand, insisting on enough. Although Si Wu was annoyed, they still discussed their reputation in outings, whereas Guanggu couldn't catch a criminal who was cowering in some corner. Then Yun Ti nodded towards Si Wu and told him he should salute them, as they were seniors too. He pushed his glasses up, telling him that he lacked proper manners. He imitated his attitude, telling him that they stank, so it was better not to obstruct the path. And what was he doing with the glasses? These words thoroughly infuriated them. They grinned cruelly, beginning to demonstrate their strength, wishing to set him straight. Yungu, shielding Si Wu, did not continue his earlier placatory demeanor, stating that Jun Ti needed to learn to distinguish between private and public issues. Chong-won did not quit, inquiring as to who Jungu was to presume to instruct Jun Ti in a lesson, and Si Wu was simply speaking rubbish. Yungu inquired back what had occurred just then. Si Wu replied calmly that Chong-won had misheard because his ears were plugged with fat. Chong-won swore at Jun-gus group as being crazy. Everyone around them stared at them with disgust. Muttering that Jun-gus people needed to be given a lesson, a hand placed itself quietly on his shoulder. Branch Director Baek Jin-ho spoke softly that he was the boss here, frightening him white. Both of them shook in fear at his presence. He turned back and smiled warmly to welcome Si Wu. Meanwhile, he reproached Jungu for idling gossiping here. He warmly draped his arm on his shoulder, inviting him to have tea. He simply replied calmly that it made no difference. The two guards following behind them failed to see the reason for receiving him this kindly. Chong-won was discontent and was preparing himself to utter some curses when he was halted by a voice from behind him. He changed course, commanding the two guards ahead of them to their best and avoid slackness when handling things of no use. The two individuals stood back and grumbled, not aware of who Si Wu was for the branch director to show him such special favor. In his office, he smiled slowly and invited Si Wu to have tea, indicating that this was the first time the two had ever met. Si Wu merely quietly inquired what he was to do. Jungu, opposite him, was very concerned over his apathetic attitude. For fear of spoiling things, he laughed openly, telling him he was actually a direct person and that he enjoyed very much. He cut to the chase to ask about Incheon prison. This made Jungu very uncomfortable. He brought up the Bestia incident. He had taken full responsibility for the investigation, even though the cases of corruption within the Incheon prison would be dealt with independently. He couldn't keep silent about the fugitive escaping criminal. He believed that anyone as powerful as to beat down as he was shouldn't fail to catch a fleeing offender, and Si Wu also peacefully sipped his tea on hearing this. So, for convenience in discussion, he directed Jungu to go out for some time. Hearing helplessly and having to move out as he was ordered, he continued to convince Si Wu that he realized Jungu and acknowledged his talent. But eliminating a group of assassins on his own was futile. Si Wu might be assisting him. talking about the pros, he started. If him and he implicated himself, he would receive a lighter sentence, and it would be a grand feat. They couldn't afford to ignore a fugitive waken criminal on the Hunter Investigation Bureau's most wanted list, particularly when there was a strange rookie such as S.I. Wu. He mentioned he had gone to see an old friend who was well familiar with him and was even highly willing to see him. He was also very inquisitive as to who that might be. Someone emerged from behind the door. The legend of the original generation hunters, one of the 3 support pillars of power in Korea. A hunter Kangho, leader of the fighting warrior guild Do Kangho served. He, surprised that it had been so long. He explained from the time he learned the news from Yonho, he had believed that he had surely died. Siwoo politely praised that he was still young, and that he himself had become old. Precuriously asked him who the man in front of him was. S.I. Wu informed him that this man was Sword Demon, a hunter and one of the 3 masters of the first generation, whose name was Du Kangho. S.I. Wu further indicated that he and Du Kangho were fellow soldiers who had lived and died together. Du Kangho, on hearing him utter that he wasn't old, laughed endlessly. He stated that he was the one defying time since he watched him vanish for all those years. But when he returned, not a single scratch on his face. Not able to hold himself back, Du Kangho questioned where S.I. Wu had been all this while, and that his disciples had been frantically searching for him. Siwoo wouldn't respond to his question, offering only the suggestion of a second bottle of liquor. He said he sensed that there was much to be discussed now. Du Kangho asked him how things had worked out after everything. Had it really been 100 years past in another realm? Even with nothing left that could shock him, he could still not grasp what S.I. Wu had gone through during that duration. S.I. Wu ate peacefully and verified that such things were accurate, reporting that the instant he killed the Demon King of the 4th realm, some form of space magic had been invoked. S.I. Wu believed it to be his last ability or some type of equipment. Du Kangho just spoke the words when S.I. Wu panicked. He was very upset that the Demon King was alive still, but man and demon signed a peace pact. Siwoo did not understand why humans were able to put their faith in those demons. Noticing him getting angry, Du Kangho calmed him down, reminding him that from a theoretical viewpoint the Demon King was alive, but in reality he was only a corpse-like form. He added that while he was still present, the war between humans and the demon race had already lasted for hundreds of years but still had no conclusion. But as soon as he defeated the Demon King and vanished, the demon race promptly suggested signing a peace treaty. The demon race even added that the treaty was the will of a small minority and not the entire demon race. But Du Kangho realized that humans had no other option. For since the advent of the first spatial gate, humans had been fighting to resist the monster invasions. Not to speak of communication, nations were on the brink of devastation. Humans had attempted to seal those gates, but the lawless awakened wandered everywhere, and order was not present. And then there was the war against the demon race, from which mankind was thoroughly drained. Did Kangho also mention that in the midst of that situation, a peace treaty was proposed by the demon race. They vowed to assist the nations in recovering, and even demonstrate to humans how to seal the gates. As a counteroffer, the body of the Demon King needed to be surrendered to them, along with a specific piece of land within the Arctic upon which they could temporarily settle until they discovered a means for going back to their dimension. But at that time, both gates and mana were foreign concepts. Everyone believed that for humanity to continue to exist, they had to return to the life before the gates appeared and learn to adapt to the new power. And at last, the offer was accepted. The most powerful hunters of all nations gathered together and signed the treaty. Representative from Korea was Choi Dae-soo. The demon race from then on was always in the claimed area. They emerged only where they assisted mankind, and no other issues existed before. And some of course remained suspicious with their first generations who did not yet trust the demon race and fought against the treaty. But when Suwoo went missing, the primary icon of war against the demon race slowly collapsed. During the modern day, fears regarding the demon race had also subsided over time. Even Du Kangho no longer cared about the demon race, but because Suwoo had come back now, he sensed something was amiss. He immediately inquired what he was trying to say. Du Kangho told him that his intention was regarding his own name, Mad Dog Min Suwoo, since it had all been erased from files for the last decade. Rumors had circulated that Choi Dae-soo had had a hand in erasing this name. Du Kangho also informed him that having erased his name, it had been done so effectively that among the subsequent generations of hunters, hardly anyone remembered his name or his exploits. Even he had forgotten his appearance beforehand. But the two had fought together at the master level before. But Suwoo had been forgotten after only 10 years. Dukango sensed something amiss here. Suwoo didn't hesitate and directly asked if he thought Choi Dae-soo and the demon race had reached some kind of agreement. Dukango wasn't sure. After all, Choi Dae-soo had always wanted to surpass Suwoo. So that was possible. Bree couldn't help but exclaim that those demon race were always doing shady things. Suwoo, on the other hand, began to think about Choi Dae-soo colluding with the demon race. Was he doing this simply to wipe out his existence? But if that was the case, Suwoo couldn't comprehend what the demon race benefited from this. If it was to retaliate for killing the demon king, Suwoo thought that it was not worth it in the least. The face of Choi Dae-soo remained stuck in his mind. Dukango explained to him that it was not the moment to accuse, because after he went missing, the demon race had no movements at all. They'd even assisted humans in adapting to mana. Suwoo, upon hearing this, got angry, because if the demon race did not consider themselves as the superior species, in charge of all dimensions, then the war would have never happened. Dukango also agreed with him in appearance, but he believed that they were trapped in the gate just like humans. Suwoo suddenly recalled Dukango as disciples. They were the people who knew this the best, and he asked him why he did not go inquire of them. He also reminded Dukango that all of them had dispersed, so this would not be easy. He smiled upon hearing, then said, "Wasn't Kang Yoa still in Korea?" Dukango remembered that 10 years ago she was just a rookie, but now she had become the guild leader of Shinhwa and Srank Hunter. He also distinctly remembered that Yoa had once highly respected Suwoo, but now she ended up under Choi Dae-soo. Suwoo just replied that he supposed she had her reasons, and then switched the subject to the fact that the alcohol was not good. Dukango laughed and replied that he had aged away, but now was finicky with liquor? He also added that if he wanted good liquor, it needed to cost a lot of money. He suddenly remembered that they should have invited Min Sejun too. Suwoo, having heard that, instructed him to forget it, because if Sejun was aware that he was there, he would go mad, because Suwoo knew Sejun was very protective of him. But the two did not know their photo had been taken by someone. The moment the person who had just taken the photo called the chairman, this person was the one they were contemplating. Yoa complimented, then instructed him to come back. Then she opened up the image that the individual had sent. Yoa could not believe it was Suwoo. She did not expect him to be back. Yoa considered the unexpected activity from the Empire Hunter Guild and the turmoil in the Rookie Tower. Then she had gotten the feeling, but now she was sure. Yoa began crying endlessly. She vividly recalled that since joining Choi Dae-soo's team, Sejun never shared any secrets with her, as she wasn't sure. Yoa had instructed someone to track down Dukango, and all had transpired as she assumed. Suwoo would never come back. Everyone who was around her told her, but Yoa never lost hope. She looked everywhere but was still unable to find him. Now Yoa had caught sight of him showing up safely in Korea. That was the kind of man her master was supposed to be. Crying for a little while. Then Yoa stood up quickly. Strangely clear-headed, she realized perfectly well that this was no time to weep. She needed to go see Choi Dae-soo right now. He burst out from somewhere behind, beckoning Yoa. She respectfully addressed him as Sir Choi Dae-soo. Upon hearing that, instructed her to call him uncle when they were alone, then inquired where she was hurrying off to. Yoa suddenly shivered, stating that it was nothing. Choi Dae-soo approached and put his hand on her shoulder, coldly revealing her. He also told that it had taken a long while since he'd seen that face in Yoa's eyes. Not even when her mama died, Yoa wasn't this shaken like this. Choi Dae-soo, with her attitude, knew what that meant. It was true. Then he learned that crazy dog Siwoo had come back. Choi Dae-soo laughed coldly and said, "So this is the reason why Yoa ran off like a dog searching for its master." He stroked her head, but it didn't reveal any gentleness, and said, "You're still stupid and naive as usual. Because even if I were to relinquish my lineage, Yoa is still the only granddaughter of Choi Dae-soo. There's no possibility that I would let her go so easily." Yoa, when he heard that, brushed him away strongly with his hand, and it became certain that even though she voluntarily had come here, he mustn't make the wrong assumptions. Because since the very start, Yoa's intention was only to meet Siwoo. Choi Dae-soo was by no means provoked, for he had already assumed. So he also understood that she came in his direction thinking that he must be related to Siwoo's going missing. Choi Dae-soo had taken in Yoa, but even then, perfectly well understood that she was playing deaf to listen to his instructions while secretly inquiring about the truth. It was just because Choi Dasu realized that somebody with her skill still possessed a value that could be utilized that she did. Yoa was very angry upon hearing these words. Even he told her that, in this nation, upper-level hunters were regarded as important talents. Did she really think that he would easily let go of someone useful? What's more, Yoa was also someone from the family. So did she really think that Choi Dasu would easily hand her over to Saiwoo? Yoa pointed at him, questioning what he was saying was ridiculous, as Choi Dasu had thrown her away when she needed him the most. Choi Dasu wasn't entitled to say those words. In Yoa's opinion, he had never been family. And Saiwoo was the one who had raised her into the woman she was today. Choi Dasu also accepted that. But at the same time, he knew that Saiwoo didn't know that Yoa was the daughter of a prominent criminal when she was in a haze. Choi Dasu told Yoa not to do anything stupid. She remembered that she knew Saiwoo better and knew how cold-blooded he was to criminals, and how he would react once he knows Yoa's history. Choi Dasu went to the extent of saying that regardless of how good Saiwoo was, her origins would never change when she heard these words. Yoa could only tighten her fist in anger, cursing him as a bastard. Silently, two persons at this time in a crowded area went to look for Saiwoo. The girl inquired if he was the hunterman Saiwoo. She mentioned that she had heard he would be involved in the joint training, and whether those who came with him would also join. Saiwoo wasn't shy to admit it. He also told his subordinates that they should learn a bit. Saiwoo instructed them to look up to the people with him as their superiors in actual combat experience, and that the mascot head was just to camouflage their faces. The girl could only say how much she looked forward to it. Not forgetting to identify herself as the hunter Shin Jaizo of the Empire Guild, she suddenly remembered the captain of the Empire Guild, Kim Byuguk. Kim Guk, who was beside her, was constantly expressing his amazement that this was the first time that he had met a hunter that was so old. Red Ghost was agitated as he listened to them greeting him. He was even complimented for being smart, so naturally he would learn quickly. Red Ghost was able to make himself smile only and told them he would do his best. Beside him, Jaizo watched folk with big sympathy because he must have felt very hot. Saiwoo suddenly turned and told the two of them that for them, this counted as public service. If they went slow, he would kill them. Folk asked if he believed the oath with Manhwa was a joke, and stated that if he failed to do his work, he would lose his head. Saiwoo stated he naturally knew, reminding the two individuals to do it properly. Upon hearing this, folk had no option but to give in. When the spatial gate number F5, for the Empire Guild, came up, it was when Saiwoo shouted to start. Jaizo, as she walked, was saying how excited she was. This was the reason why she had not been through the spatial gate since leaving the rookie tower. Saiwoo reassured her and said that she did not need to be scared. He told her that the spatial gate was only a path that linked various dimensions and was merely just doors. Hyunguk explained to him that there were instances when people got trapped, since the gate had closed before they could leave. They referred to it as being swallowed by the gate. Saiwoo thought this idea was rather new, since it was only a door that had closed. Red Ghost also agreed with his point because right now, people have almost taken hold of the keys for these gates, and private guilds being able to own spatial gates prove that the things that used to be a disaster had now turned into an industry, and that included monostones, monster cores, the corpses of lifeforms / U2014. All of this was money. If they were frightened to begin with, then there would be nothing. Saiwoo, on this side, had stepped into a different world for the first time. Jisoo felt like she was expanding her horizons. She felt the urge to vomit, wondering whether this was one of the symptoms of spatial gate sickness. Hyunguk, however, realized that it was not like within the tower, since he couldn't spot monsters around the entrance. Saiwoo observed their dazed expressions, and it was like they were having a picnic. He questioned whether the youth today were all like this. Saiwoo even overheard that currently, there were even academies to train hunters, and he was interested in seeing what the young ones would be studying there. Crudely told Saiwoo that he knew that he was a first-generation hunter, but since the tactics when confronting the spatial gates were domesticated around Generation 15, hunters were simply professions that could be trained with the appropriate curriculum. Those individuals who accepted this employment would enter into the rookie tower, would get through the exams in order to grade their standing, and from there would get recruited by the hunter guilds according to that standing. Only those hunters, after becoming guild members, would proceed to actual battle. Saiwoo felt that this was just mass-producing a horde of weaklings, and these people would just get annihilated in one monster wave. He then looked at Jisoo and Hyunguk, instructing them to demonstrate their skills a little. Before actual battle, the two of them would naturally listen. No matter how hard they tried to present the best show, Hyunguk couldn't help but wonder that, even though they were doing what they had been instructed by the captain to do, he had no idea who the name in front of them was and why he was commanding them. Hyunguk turned to glance at Jisoo, a little uneasy that they had to train together with a novice who had not yet properly activated their skill, while Jisoo was still struggling to put on an act. While she was celebrating that she had completed showing all of it off, an accident suddenly occurred. Jisoo sat on the ground, dizzy and apologizing. Saiwoo immediately instructed her to disregard those words, and handed something to her. Jisoo stared blankly, while Saiwoo handed her a whip. He informed her that it was a magical tool that facilitated chanting. The more intricate the pattern of the formation, the better it would work. Saiwoo reported that he had overheard Minjin mention Jisoo's skill attributes, and he instructed her to utilize the whip as a catalyst and retry. She, naturally, did as she was told without any reluctance. Jisoo started to concentrate and chant and repeated the actions. Hyunguk, upon seeing this, didn't know what to do at this moment. Everyone was warned that a herd of goblins had arrived. Saiwoo then instructed Hyunguk to handle it. He was a bit agitated about this and asked him again. Saiwoo affirmed that he was indeed telling him to deal with it, and also inquired if he wanted him to do it for him. Saiwoo reminded Hyunguk to just not get killed, and he had no choice but to curse under his breath on the inside. Red Ghost, watching Hyunguk employ a skill that was of the tracking type, said that it was a skill that was hard to employ, and at best it was only B+ level. Even Pri could notice that his skill was utterly useless, and it was as if he was dancing about randomly. Red Ghost believed that if Hyunguk were to just go on and use his skill repeatedly like that, ultimately he would exhaust his mana. Goblins were indeed easy monsters, it was a fact, but to have a fresh recruit fend for himself against the whole herd of them was such a senseless thing to do. Hyunguk struggled to bear this, and resorted to shouting to see if Jisoo was finished, and she only said that she still wasn't done at this exact moment. He had depleted his mana. Seizing that opportunity, one of the goblins charged forward to attack. Jisoo was just in time to utilize the taming skill. More precisely, it was Tame Skill 1, a level, and had the ability to control monsters for 10 minutes, and the others would be dependent on how much mana the user had at that instant. Jisoo had controlled the goblin and had rescued Hyunguk. She commanded it to escape, and the goblin readily obeyed what she had ordered. Jisoo was thrilled that she had managed to do it, and looked at Saiwoo to see his opinion on her controlling skill. People knew that she was employing a controlling skill, which was a very uncommon type of skill. Red Ghost also knew that although she had a magic tool to back her up, the skill itself was also a relatively high level. Pri spoke up, complimenting that Jisoo was promising, then stated the contract that it had with Saiwoo. He also thought the situation was highly interesting, but he was simply curious. Saiwoo asked Jisoo what she was going to do with a controlled monster. Upon hearing that, she was frightened and screamed for Hyunguk to wake up quickly. Her solution at that moment was to shout loudly for someone to come and rescue them. After finishing the training, Jisoo approached Saiwoo to thank him. She said that thanks to him, she understood how to use her skill. Folk felt like Jisoo had lost half her life and wondered if she could even walk home. Saiwoo instructed Jisoo to tell Sejin that she should ask another instructor if she couldn't. Upon hearing that, Jisoo smiled and explained that she was really thankful. She confessed she had been too proud, assuming that awakening an ability and being a special. She always believed the higher the grade, the greater the person. Hyunguk remained in a coma. Jisoo went on, understanding that skills were merely tools, not who she was. Regardless of the sharpness of the sword she was wielding it relied on her, which made mana adjustment and retuning even more vital. Following Jisoo's lengthy monologue, Saiwoo told her it was a good thing she learned something. If Jisoo was in need, she could ask Folk or Red Ghost. He saw unwanted visitors. Red Ghost asked if they belonged to another gang. Jisoo interrupted, commenting that she heard Chinyabang and a number of other gangs were discussing about a newly opened gate in the Middle Eastern desert, and perhaps the strangers were connected to it. Saiwoo vaguely mouthed Chinyabang after having heard her. Jisoo, noticing his distraction, summoned him across on Yowo's side. Her eyes irresistibly turned Saiwoo's direction. even while her subordinates kept reporting that the gate found recently was unique compared to the others because when they and the Empire Bang encountered it, they saw the remains of the first hunter team to enter. The individual stated the hunters did not appear to be attacked by monsters since their bodies had no outside wounds, but their internal organs were smashed. Yowo was quite shocked. She thought it was odd that something must have blown up from within them. As she was pondering, someone approached to welcome Yowo. Saiwo approached and called out her name outright. He teased that her master had come back, but she didn't even greet him. Yowo was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and welcomed him. Saiwo wished to inquire if she had time, but the moment he got there, Yowo interrupted him, telling him she had matters to attend to and excused herself to depart. Her subordinates were quick to follow suit. Fry took advantage of the moment to mock Saiwo at being rejected so abruptly, inquiring if he needed consolation. Red Ghost also condemned Yowo as impolite and asked Saiwo if she too was a discarded disciple. Saiwo confessed it, but stated that wasn't what he was worried about. He was only worried about whether Yowo had cried. Saiwo recalled each time he found her hiding somewhere, crying by herself. Yowo would ask him to leave. Saiwo stated that she and Shurjen were the same age. Why be so disappointed at losing a match? He also wanted to know why Yowo hid whenever she cried. Saiwo would pat Yowo's head and say that everyone could see she was crying. Yowo would brush his hand away, scowling and saying Shurjen was his little brother and would learn better while she was somebody whom he picked up along the way. Yowo said she thanked him for rescuing a hungry child, but she liked it better if he stayed out of everything. Yowo explained she knew Saiwo was tough and nice, but he wasn't her real brother. Saiwo ignored these words and kept patting Yowo's head with his two hands and saying he would do what he wanted. He smiled and told them they were born into this awful world already, so couldn't he select his own family? Saiwo promised to treat her as a real sister and asked if it would be better for her if she considered him a real brother. Yowo pouted upon hearing this and told him she didn't need that. Saiwo smiled and asked if he should double the strength of her training tomorrow so she would cry even more. Yowo scowled and asked if he wasn't already working her to the limit. Yowo walked, wondering how she had said it in half-joking manner. But she was sincere. She never wanted to be Saiwo's disciple or sister. Yowo wanted to be by his side as equal, to protect him. She wanted to become a comrade to support his cause. But Yowo knew that she had grown other feelings for Saiwo. She also knew she was the daughter of a criminal, an unwanted offspring but raised on the dirty money from robbery. Yowo didn't give herself permission to cultivate such feelings. Heart-wrenching as it was, she had to accept was correct. Saiwo shouldn't be hanging around someone like her nonetheless. Yowo couldn't just stand by and do nothing if she couldn't stand at his side proudly. Then from the back, she would battle for the man who had provided her with a new life. This was when Yowo went to visit Shurjen. He was quite taken aback by seeing her. Shurjen told him that he should now be addressing her as the head of Manhwa Bang. But they were yet to start the meeting. Yowo couldn't tell why she had come. Yowo blurted out Shizen's name, explaining that she had something to tell. In a dimly lit chamber, Decoding explained that he did not suspect anyone. He declared that since the first gate opened up, the three emperors had always been on the front lines of combating the demons. At that time, when men were drunk with their newly discovered powers and society was in turmoil, he never despised the comrades who struggled for the survival of mankind. But still, if Choi Disu had made necessary bargains with the demons to restore civilization, Decoding was interrupted by Choi Disu. He explained Decoding did not have to beat about the bush and questioned whether Decoding had encountered Siwoo, and had him declare that he was suspicious. Choi Disu explained that 10 years had taught Siwoo how to keep his tail between his legs, but Decoding, like all the others, had taken it the wrong way. Choi Disu explained that what he had been hunting was not peace among nations or prosperity for mankind. Reminding himself of the emperors was causing him to laugh. Because what he desired was absolute authority, and mana had been granted to humankind. Choi Disu was desiring to take it to its utmost limit. His intention was to overcome the strongest and become more powerful still. Regarding his transactions with the demons, they were all for himself. Looking at the flag on the table, Choi Disu remembered how world leaders had shaken hands with the demons, not just for peace but for their own interests, and now, 10 years later, humanity had established a stronger civilization than before. He mentioned that Decoding also thought this was necessary back then, but now he was blaming him? Decoding was speechless after being questioned. He directly asked Choi Disu what deals he made with the demons and whether he was responsible for the disappearance and erasure of Siwas records. Choi Disu laughed and declared he did not have anything to conceal if Siwoo had come back. He would get his chance to crush him once again. And if Decangdo wished, they could confront each other. A voice suddenly echoed, making Choi Disu jump. The individual stated he also had some questions to ask him. Siwoo regarded him indifferently from outside. He also did not forget to salute the individual in front of him. Siwoo gazed downward at Choi Disu from above and saluted him, his arm releasing subtle crackling lightning. The door directly in front of him broke into pieces at once. His frightening face and evil grin looked enlarged to him. Eagerly greeting his name, Siwoo put one foot on the broken windowsill, grumbling that he was too high. He had planned to enter from the front door, but the procedures were slow and irritating. Siwoo jumped lightly inside, inserting his hands into his pockets, and spoke bluntly. He looked him straight in the eye and came to the point, asking Disu if he was the one who conspired with Pandemonium and pushed him into another world a decade ago. Disu was so enraged he gripped his head and laughed, not believing he had destroyed the place just to pose that question. Because he had sworn at him, Siwoo was not courteous either, taunting him as one eye, asking him to respond to his question straightforwardly. Disu suddenly burst out laughing at his conceited demeanor. He casually confessed that he had done it, even stating absurdly that he was still in one piece even after having gone to another world for 10 years. Immediately, something whizzed past his face, breaking a potted plant behind him. Siwoo threatened to murder him if he did not respond seriously, inquiring once more whether he had worked with the Pandemonium trash, whether he was the one who had killed young Minjin. Disu remained there, lifting his hand to wipe his face. The killing intent coming from him intensified, commanding him not to touch you and his disciples. Disu cleared his throat and smiled, and then he tossed his head back and laughed loudly. He glanced at where Siwoo was always radiating murderous intent that filled the room and applauded him. Disu also started to radiate his own murderous intent, demonstrating that he too had grown stronger in the last decade. Siwoo had been in another world. He felt Siwoo was no longer his match anymore. His face turned more eager than ever to fight with Siwoo. Siwoo also exercised his power, sending beams of light flashing all around, ready to strike back. But before the two could engage, Decangdo promptly stepped out and blocked them. He attempted to pacify both sides and calm them down, stating they were both rank hunters of the country and shouldn't be fighting foolishly. The onlookers standing around were puzzled and disoriented. He confronted Siwoo, scolding him, stating the Empire Bang was still keeping him safe because he was under HMCSS management. It was the time of the era of the rule of law, and fighting hunters would draw much public notice. He even deployed his younger brother to threaten him in order to make him cease and not continue to make trouble. Disu, his face full of murderous intent, complained that he was too strict. Then, he began to reminisce about the days when he could fight freely, kill and flaunt his power without being confined. Disu considered the present times to be extremely boring and dull. After a lot of rambling, he eventually came to the conclusion that he was not responsible for young Mingjin's death. Meanwhile, Disu explained that he never touched you. She had approached him instead. Additionally, he facetiously said that all his disciples were worthless rubbish. With that, Disu went around and no longer argued with him, telling him to visit him properly the next time so he could have a place where he could go wild without inhibition. Siwoo glared at him wordlessly. Kango let out a sigh of relief, observing that things had cooled down. The door to the elevator started to open as Disu descended. He got a report from his team that there was commotion coming from upstairs. He casually chastised them, telling them that no one was able to harm him, so no one had to worry. The team member hastily nodded and apologized. Then, Disu kept ordering him to call more young Disu, instructing them to set up a Gradia gate and bring Kongyu here in a dark night office. 7 hours ago, Mingjin sat at his desk wondering what his was. You stood next to him, also in thought, and gave some vital information. All the hunter's organs that were discovered near the gate were all broken on a cellular level. She assumed that they had probably met with a threatening individual or consumed something that caused them to be so. Meanwhile, you considered it strange that they were all connected to an enigmatic group named Is, which was a guild that existed close to that gate. She knew nothing about the Is guild, so everything was stuck. You only knew there was a rumor that the chairman of Is was a demon. Upon hearing this, Shijun was shocked. He started to inquire about it. She understood and cut him off, strongly saying that if he did not believe it and did not keep investigating, she would still keep investigating. Then you turned and departed, vowing to report more if she had anything else. She also cautioned Shijun not to call her first because Disu was keeping an eye on his guild. Shijun immediately called her, wishing to call you back, not wishing her to depart. You could only bow her head and silently beg him not to inform their master she did not wish to return. As soon as she had gone, Shijun sat thinking about you. Too long had she stood by Dice's side, so now he slumped back in his chair and exhaled a weary sigh. Shijun wondered why she continued to remain by his side now that Siwoo had come back. He started to consider his brother's pupils. Not fully trusting them, Shijun held his head tiredly, not comprehending what they were trying to do. Then, suddenly, Siwoo came in from outside, making him jump up at once. The question he first asked was how you was. He turned away clumsily. Siwoo also realized that something had occurred, and so he encouraged him to tell him the answer to his question. He wanted to know what befell her. Out in the street, Yu was standing alongside a group of people. They told her that Disu had called out an emergency, so they came. Yu cursed in desperation and followed them. Immediately after Min Siwoo went missing 10 years ago, in a decrepit old building, two individuals faced each other. Disu spoke, querying the individual in front of him whether he desired to assist him to blot Min Siwoo out of everybody's minds. Ekoton easily admitted it, having a slight irritability because Siwoo had sent the 4 archdukes of hell to the edge of extermination. He felt the power of the Demon King needed to be upheld unconditionally to control demons who have powerful, strong-willed dispositions. Thus, documenting that the Demon King almost lost to a human was a discredit and a danger to their hierarchy. Ekoton moved a couple of steps forward in order to bargain better with Disu. Disu was not influenced by Haiketon's arguments. He informed him that he didn't need to take the offer of one who was exiled to the outermost lands like Haiketon, the sort of man who had gained and overcome war losses. Haiketon departed, leaving with extremely unnerving words. Subconsciously, he was also let down by this turn of events. Wasn't he? He had opened up a new ability of immense power, but he was governed by rules and could not use it with the same freedom as earlier. Haiketon increasingly worked on the weakness deep within Dice's heart. He always wanted to battle the strong, didn't he? He issued an offer of assistance to aid him in reaching the height of Mana's ultimate capability, making Disu slightly wavering, his arms clasped around himself, wondering if they were simply doing this in order to destroy a record of the Demon King's defeat at the hands of a human being. He wondered also that if he grew stronger, it would be an even bigger threat to them. Then why would they assist him? Haiketon chuckled as if he knew all of Dice's heart and mind. Demons had extremely long lifespans, much longer than humans, and all they wanted was the genuine meaning of magical power and the spatial portals linking the worlds. Disu bowed his head and did not respond. Noticing that he appeared unsure, Haiketon turned around and departed, stating that he would wait for the official response from him. Disu folded his arms and continued pondering the offer. Within the Moryong Association's private Ifrang gate, Disu was as stiff as a statue. The employee stood with his hands folded, informing that he had prepared an empty gate of no investigational worth. He also informed that they had closed off all public access to this gate, verifying no signs of life within. He turned his head and chuckled in admiration, inquiring if the invitation had been extended. He reminded him of the meeting tomorrow with some helplessness. Disu turned away uneasily. From behind, a voice suddenly rebuked, "You instructed me to take a business trip." Yoa put her hands on her hips, a little irked. "Now you're calling me to this godforsaken location," he gestured with his hand, instructing her to watch what she says. ABC also quickly understood and nodded goodbye. Leaving when he waved his hand, Yoa approached him, not understanding what was happening. Her face clouded over when she heard him tell her she was connected to Min Siwoo's vanishing. Disu told her he had not replied and had not worked with the demons, but meanwhile, he did nothing to stop his presence from vanishing from the world. Yoa's expression turned black, revealing anger and confusion as he continued muttering to himself. He formed a channel of power in his hand, wondering if his earlier indifference had served to make him stronger, but that was not the case. Disu went after Yoa, shouting that she wanted to demonstrate that she was stronger than Min Siwoo. She darted to one side, swearing at him. She struggled to land on the ground, crying and asking what the demons were offering. Yoa was very uneasy knowing that his disappearance was connected to him. Deadly intentions slowly surrounded her. When she attacked, he just extended himself to stop her and remarked that she was similar to her mother with her temper, her cowardice, and her slow brain. He started directing his attacks back towards Yoa, leaving her quite overwhelmed. An enormous explosion had occurred, dust flying up to cover the area. She was hurting when her entire body had crashed into a rock wall. Disu cursed that she was nothing but a tool to force Min Si Woo's murderous intention to its peak. Disu rubbed his neck gently as he told how he used to be incredibly insecure, but so did that insecurity vanish with Si Woo's vanishing, but it was an irreparable blot on his life. Disu believed this was the perfect chance to erase that memory. Yoa cackled derisively, assuming that he wouldn't fall for his ruse to rescue her, but Disu was certain he would. He raised his foot and trod on her shoulder disdainfully, laughing at Si Woo's laughable family game. Subsequently, Disu remembered his resolute eyes when he charged into his workplace. Having the sense that he left too many things behind in that world, he trod more heavily, wishing to utilize Yoa as a spark to inflame Si Woo's craziness, although Min Jin's death as a youth had nothing to do with him. A chain progressively unfolded in Dice's hand. He used it to bind Yoa tightly, and she gritted her teeth with pain observing her repeatedly trying to break free. He burst out laughing, telling her not to squirm in vain since even an Srank hunter could not easily get out of his chains. Disu smiled extremely wickedly, clarifying how it was done. It would drain more and more of Yoa's mana as she strained, and she would gradually be left to cripple. She was still very resolute on confronting him, calling him trash. All of a sudden, she was shocked by what she saw before her eyes. Si Woo came rushing in from somewhere with fierce murderer's intent. Directly rushing towards Disu, an enormous explosion suddenly went off there, discharging rocks and filling the entire room. Disu was concentrating vast power in the air, laughing enthusiastically. He wanted to change his history. Disu wished to slay Si Woo so that the name Choi Disu would be the strongest in the continent, written in history rather than his name. Si Woo looked at him and sneered. The powers hurriedly came towards him. The ground beneath his feet was all ripped up. Disu stepped back, laughing wildly, and continued to pounce on him. He laughed wildly, believing that the difference in power between the two had widened, that he could no longer catch up to him. Cray furiously cursed Disu, also concerned because he had not yet completely regained his power, but still fought him very calmly. He commanded it to amplify its power to the fullest.